from ENA headquarters in Schaumburg, Illinois, ENA presents the 2020 General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, ENA and ENA President Mike Hastings welcome you to the 2020 ENA General Assembly.
No matter where you are across the globe, welcome to the 2020 General Assembly, ENA's first ever virtual General Assembly. Thank you to approximately 700 member delegates and past presidents who haven't let the challenge of this year interfere with their commitment to help further guide ENA's mission and future. It is that type of dedication which has driven ENA for a half a century and will sustain us for many, many years to come. Although we are physically separated, ENA is together. The ideas we discuss today show that. The decisions we make today ensure that. Our greatest assets are the members, volunteers, and delegates who foster a spirit of community within emergency nursing. It is that collection of people, that collection of leaders, which make ENA and emergency nurses around the world a valued and critical part of the healthcare world. Our work does not stop, so we gather today to continue shaping our course. At this time, I would like to call to order the 2020 General Assembly of the Emergency Nurses Association.
As of Tuesday, September the 8th, there were 716 delegates who completed the credentialing procedures. Our bylaws require a majority of the delegates who have completed credentialing procedures to be present for a quorum. Based on the delegates registered, we have 577 that are logged into the Lumi platform. I move that the roll call of delegates hereby submitted be the official roll of the voting members of the 2020 General Assembly.
It is moved to adopt the report. We'll now vote on the roll call of the delegates. Vote pro or con on whether to accept this report. So 10 seconds. So the credentials report is accepted. Let me now turn it over to our parliamentarian, Jim Slaughter, who will take a few minutes to describe the 2020 General Assembly standing rules and procedure we will follow for this virtual General Assembly.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry we're not here in person to see everybody, but they've asked me to talk about the rules for a couple of minutes. Please keep in mind that this year's convention would have been different no matter what. And that's because even an in-person meeting was going to be a one-day meeting, and you all usually have multiple days. So it was going to be a compressed meeting no matter what, and the rules would have had to have been changed to allow for a compressed meeting. And then you add the virtual aspect. All of y'all have become experts at Zoom now. You know how it works with 10 people on Zoom or on any virtual platform. Some people are muted. Sometimes the technology doesn't quite work. Imagine that with 700 delegates. It's just a different process. Technology often slows down. You can't get proposals from people onto the screen immediately so that people can see them as easily. Imagine what a 2 or 3 day Zoom meeting would be like. And because of that, the rules have been changed just for this year, and again, they would have been changed in person as well, to make for a shorter, more compressed meeting. So what you'll see if you take a look at the ENA standing rules for this year is that the process will be this morning. There will be the usual reference hearing. The author will get to speak as usual. Delegates will get to speak. The committee will meet during the break to try and quickly as possible come up with any suggestions or recommendations or proposals that they might make. Then this afternoon, we'll come back and we'll have our usual discussion. It will be shorter than usual, and every delegate will be limited to 1 minute just so that everybody has a chance to speak, except we're going to have blocks of time on each one so that there is some limit and this doesn't turn into a 4-day virtual session. The rules are really what they are because of the technology and what they have to be. And they're really not very different than the rules I'm seeing at all sorts of large virtual meetings right now. Again, we hope this won't be the process next year. It's just for this year. I would not focus on how this is different than usual. I would focus on how this is pretty amazing when you think about it. You all in the middle of a pandemic are going to get 700 people together to discuss the proposals, get to talk about them. The resolutions committee is going to take a look at possibly amending them, and then you're going to debate and vote on it in the middle of a pandemic where you can't be within 6 feet of each other. In terms of leading, I think ENA is doing a pretty impressive job of showing that you can continue to operate an assembly like this even in the middle of a pandemic. There was a question that was asked about the new Robert's Rules of Order. In case you didn't hear, there was new Robert's Rules of Order that came out last week. Your all's documents say that you follow the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order, which is this book now, as of last week. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at the new book, that's fine. I took a look at it over the weekend because I live large. And I can tell you, from my personal opinion, there is nothing in this book that will change the way that this meeting would have been run after the book than before. And it's mainly because almost all of the changes deal with technical amendments or it deals with editorial changes or word changes. It's not going to affect the general operation of a General Assembly like this. If there is a difference, I will talk with the President and we'll deal with that situation, but I truly cannot imagine any noticeable difference you will find because of this book. However, I would recommend it to you for your reading because it is now the parliamentary book for the ENA. With that, again, I'm sorry that I can't see you in person. We're about to move into discussion on the standing rules. I will end just by saying I wish you and your loved ones as the best possible in this weird time that we're in. And I'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Great. Thanks, Jim. So here's how you can have your voice heard today. Delegates, past presidents, and alternate delegates can use the quick terms to enter their intent to speak in the chat box. Be sure to hit the gold send icon to send your message into the queue. The chair will announce the order in which delegates speak. When you are called upon, raise your hand in Zoom. The raise hand icon is located in the Participants tab. Please raise your hand so that the production staff can enable your microphone and camera rights. Once the production staff has enabled your microphone and camera rights, you may start your video if you wish, unmute your microphone, and begin speaking. Once your turn to speak is over or your time runs out, the production team will mute your microphone and disable your video. As always, please state your name and provide the name of your state council or indicate if you're speaking on behalf of yourself. I know we'll get the hang of this pretty quickly, but if you run into any issues, check the landing page on the left side of your screen to live chat with technical support. So now we will discuss the 2020 General Assembly Standing Rules of Procedure. Is there any discussion? Good. Okay, so seeing no discussion, it's time to vote to adopt the 2020 General Assembly Standing Rules of Procedure. Please look at the left side of your screen and vote to either pro or con. You have 30 seconds to vote. Ten seconds. So the standing rules have been approved. The proposed agenda for this business meeting was included in the General Assembly Handbook. Is there any discussion on the business agenda? We will now vote on approving the agenda. So please look at your left side of your screen and vote either pro or con. You'll have 30 seconds to vote. So the agenda has been approved. Thank you, everyone. Before we move into the open reference hearings this morning, I do want to take a few minutes to reflect on the state of E&A, what we've been able to accomplish together in 2020, and of course, a few of my own personal reflections on what this year has meant to be as a leader of this amazing organization. You've seen the phrase E&A together a lot this year for good reason. When you step back and you take a breath amid everything that's happened in 2020, please take stock in the fact that we are still together, just as we are today in this great virtual space. E&A hasn't just become together in 2020, we've grown stronger together. Our backbone and will to stand tall comes from many sources, but let me give my sincerest thanks to our past presidents and the 2020 board for their guidance, expertise, and dedication to E&A. Several past presidents were there for me with advice for navigating these wild times, and I truly appreciate your help. The board, Ron Kraus, Patty Kuntz-Howard, Yope Brewer, Kristen Klein, Chris Dellinger, Terry Foster, Gordon Gillespie, Ryan Oglesby, Jen Smits, E&A CEO Nancy McRae, and Emerging Professional Liaison Micah Deva rallied together on the phone, on Zoom, and in small groups this year to make the best decisions possible under the most challenging circumstances of our generation. Let me add a special thank you to Gordon, Jen, and Micah for their service during their terms on the board. Your contributions to E&A have been immeasurable, and I know that you will continue to be leaders in the association. And a name synonymous with E&A leadership is, of course, Patty Kuntz-Howard. Patty's E&A only two-time president lives and breathes emergency nursing. We will always marvel at your tireless nature and relentless passion. No one has ever confirmed that you actually ever slept during your time as president, but I hope that as you officially step away from the board at the end of this year, your mind will be at ease knowing that E&A is where it is today because of your time as president. Thank you, Patty. The board is a part of an amazing team that also includes our state and chapter leaders and volunteer committee members who guide E&A in a constantly changing environment. Your dedication and countless sacrifices ensured E&A continued to be the leading voice for emergency nurses. Last but not least, thank you to the E&A staff who quickly adopted to working from remotely and continue to do so going on 6 months. You never wavered in your commitment to serving our members and keeping E&A moving forward. I'm happy to be here in E&A headquarters, but it's just not the same without all of you filling our amazing building with your energy. Nearly a year ago, I stood before the General Assembly in Austin and told everyone that I was in a state of shock. Even now, I can picture those initial moments standing before everyone and how I remember thinking about that great responsibility that you entrusted with me as your E&A president, especially heading into 2020, which we knew was going to be a big year. Well, standing here today, no one could have imagined all that we have faced in 2020. What we do know as emergency nurses is that our experience, skill, and commitment prepared us for something this massive. Reflecting on my journey helps me see where I would be ready for this. It started in 2004 when I joined E&A. Many of you know that I did it to help land a job in the ED as a new grad. Back then, I could never have imagined that decision would be one of the best decisions of my life. Honestly, I didn't even get that active with E&A until 2012, when I had the pleasure of becoming president in Kansas. It gave me the opportunity to see the amazing work that our E&A staff do to help all of us at the stretcher side to ensure that we have the resources we need to care for our patients. From there, I had the privilege to serve on several national committees before deciding to run for the board. I was honored to earn a seat on the board and chose to pursue an officer position and run for president in the years that led me to this point. While you put your faith in me as a leader, I knew this level of commitment to ENA would only be possible with the support of some very important people in my life. I want to say thanks to my wonderful husband, Chris, who has put up with me for the last 20 years. Thank you to my boys, Ari and Evan, for being flexible when their dad is away, representing the profession that he loves. And thanks to my mom for assisting Chris with taking care of the boys while I am away. And of course, to my work family at Swedish Edmunds. Thank you for your continued support and being the reliable team I knew I could count on. It's never easy when you need your boss and he isn't right there for you to help you out, but you rose to the occasion every time. To my ENA mentors who have challenged me, offered guidance, and have been a listening ear when I needed it, thanks for always being there for me. My goal for this year, ENA's 50th anniversary, was to celebrate the power of one and focus on how one person can make a difference. I wanted this year to be one of the major celebrations of the association and the countless emergency nurses who make a difference every single day. We definitely had big plans for this year. But just as ED nurses shift quickly when plans change at work, ENA switched its focus and adapted to meet the challenge that we are all facing professionally and personally. It started in January when COVID-19 first emerged in the US. The work to ensure ENA members had the tools and resources to understand this coronavirus literally began in a conference room in San Diego during SCLO. Those efforts have not stopped over the last 7 months. While the clinical information that you need has been front and center, ENA has also worked to support the health and well-being of its membership through initiatives such as Nurses Together peer support and the ENA Foundation COVID-19 relief grants, among others. The response from members was overwhelming, but the heavy influx of interest in ENA throughout the pandemic has been equally impressive. The association smashed its goals of reaching 50,000 members by the 50th year when we hit 51,000 members as of September 1st. At a time when emergency nurses needed somewhere to turn, they joined ENA. That membership growth only reinforced for the board and the staff the importance of our mission to advance excellence in emergency nursing. So we adapted and innovated. When in-person TNCC and ENPC courses were halted, ENA rolled out a virtual course option that served an immediate need and eventually led to the creation of the ENA delivered model that ultimately aims to increase the availability of our 2 cornerstone courses to more ED nurses than ever before. When the realities of holding Spring Regional Symposium, Day on the Hill, and Emergency Nursing 2020 were wiped out by COVID-19, ENA brought education, advocacy, and member engagement to you online, just as we're doing this week. We've even rolled out a series of virtual town halls to ensure that the voice of members would be heard. Of course, the economic downturn associated with COVID-19 required ENA to adjust its goals and plans for 2020 with an eye on positioning itself for a successful 2021. Included in your GA materials is the 2019 audited financial statements for ENA and the ENA Foundation. Similar to last year, ENA received an unqualified opinion, which is the highest opinion that can be issued. Looking back to 2019, it was a successful year for ENA in which revenues exceeded budget, and while expenses were slightly higher than budgeted, the operating surplus was a positive $552,000 or $533,000 better than expected. This continued a positive growth trend which started in 2018. ENA headed into this year with a 2020 budget built to continue the success of 2019, with organizational priorities reflecting continued revenue growth. The devastating impact of COVID-19 beginning in March brought with it a significant reduction in our revenue streams, which required substantial adjustments to ENA key priorities, plans, and product focus. As you'll note from the slide, ENA revised the 2020 budget to reflect a decrease in revenues and expenses. The revenue decrease mainly stems from a drop in TNCC and ENPC revenues experienced early in the pandemic, as well as a shift in our annual conference direction from an in-person event to the fully virtual EN20X. Expenses were also reduced to reflect the change in ENA's priorities. ENA is pleased to have received a $1.9 million forgivable loan through the Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection Program, which you may know as the PPP. The loan helped ENA significantly mitigate its operating deficit. The revised budget now projects an operating deficit of $782,000. With execution of its revised 2020 budget and plans, ENA is on track to meet or exceed its projections for the remainder of the year. While the actions required to be good stewards of the association's financial future will always be important, this year ENA has also made it a priority amid the unrest around our country to address its role in confronting the societal issue of systemic racism. In May, ENA committed itself to advancing the conversations by looking more closely on how the association can improve its understanding of the problem and better serve those hurt and discriminated against because of their skin color. To that, ENA will soon announce a conversation series designed to bring members together to talk about how this issue affects our day-to-day lives, but also how it impacts our ability to care for our patients. At a larger level, the ENA board recently established a standing diversity and inclusivity committee, which will continue the great efforts made by our work team since it was created last year. Members interested in having their voice heard should consider volunteering. The application period is now open. When we stop and reflect on 2020, we know it's not what I or anyone else with ENA envisioned. In some ways, it's even greater that we could have imagined, as we have demonstrated during this pandemic, an unquestioned, steadfast commitment to our patients and our members. It's what ENA has done for the last 50 years. I'm extremely proud of the wonderful work that we have done and will continue to do. If there's anything this year has epitomized the power of one and truly illustrated the difference each one of us can make. Whether you served as an elected ENA position locally or nationally, volunteered for a committee, offered a weary colleague your shoulder for them to cry on, started a mask-wearing campaign, brought a smile to the face of a patient whose families could not be with them, or in any of a million other ways, you made a difference. No matter what we face, one person can make a difference. You did it in 2020, and I know in my heart that you will for many years to come. It has been my honor to serve a wonderful organization as your ENA president. Although my title will soon change, my commitment to ENA and making a difference will not. So thank you for being a part of my journey and the road that awaits us.
So Mike, saying thank you just doesn't seem to do justice to the amount of appreciation that I, our staff, the board, and our members feel for the amazing leadership you have shown through this year. I know this wasn't the year you thought it was going to be, but I know also that it's exactly the year that you were meant to lead. So whether you were standing in front of virtual audiences across the world, whether you were standing in front of members offering support, whether you were representing ENA's views in town halls and in Congress, you have continued to demonstrate your commitment to ENA with poise, dignity, and enthusiasm. Your presidency is unlike any other, that is for sure. But it certainly embodies the strength, resiliency, and dedication that has served ENA for the last 50 years. So very simply and most sincerely, Mike, we thank you. Until we can hug again, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Nancy. It is now time for open reference hearings. Delegates, past presidents, and alternate delegates can use their quick terms to enter their intent to speak in the chat box. Be sure to hit the gold send icon to send your messages into the queue. The chair will announce the order in which delegates speak. Excuse me. When you're called upon, raise your hand in Zoom. The raise hand icon is located in the participants tab. Please raise your hand so that the production staff can enable your microphone and camera rights. Once the production staff has enabled your camera or your microphone and your camera rights, you can start your video if you wish. Unmute your microphone and begin speaking. Once your turn to speak is over or your time runs out, the production team will mute your microphone and disable your video. As always, please state your name, provide the name of your state council, or indicate if you're speaking on behalf of yourself. I know that we're going to get the hang of this pretty quickly. If you run into any issues, check the landing page on the left side of your screen to live chat with technical support. At this time, I recognize Adam Johnston, Chairperson of the Resolution Committee, who will be facilitating the open reference hearings.
Thank you, Mike. First, I am pleased to introduce members of the Resolutions Committee who are assisting with the reference hearings today. Danelle Brazil, Daniel Misa, Chris Parker, Cody Staub, and Andia Owens. They've been amazing through this whole year. I would also like to recognize our Board Liaison 2020 ENA President-elect Ron Kraus, as well as ENA Staff Liaison Ashley Schuring. The open reference hearing is an opportunity to discuss the proposed amended bylaws and resolution proposals submitted for consideration at this General Assembly. Please take this opportunity this morning to voice your input on the proposals. During the afternoon break, the Resolutions Committee will discuss the feedback shared during the reference hearings and will determine recommendations and potential amendments to each proposal to be presented to the General Assembly for consideration this afternoon. The committee will also determine any proposals for inclusion on the consent agenda. The Resolutions Committee thanks all authors for their submissions and looks forward to a healthy and professional debate. So let's get started. We'll begin with Proposal 20-01, the proposal to amend the ENA bylaws. This is authored by the ENA Board of Directors. Ron Kraus and Anne Marie Papa will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement.
In 2018, the Board of Directors approved the formation of the Leadership and Development Selection Task Force to look at best practices for leadership of associations. The task force did excellent work and brought recommendations to the board as defined by their charges. The board approved the recommendations presented by the task force. In accordance with our bylaws, amendment proposals to the bylaws can only be brought forward by one of two groups of members, a group of members of 10 or more, or the board of directors. The task force is only 6 members and does not meet the necessary 10 members. Therefore, the board is bringing the amendment proposal forward on behalf of the Leadership Task Force. I will now turn it over to Anne Marie Papa, the chair of the task force.
Good morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me. I'm having some audio difficulty. Ron, can you hear me? Just let me know.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So thanks again. Our task force spent 2 years pulling all this together. Many of you heard the review of the literature that we presented last General Assembly, and then we also presented at SCO. We listened to your feedback, and then we made recommendations. We reviewed that literature and made those recommendations to the board. We're pleased to say that the board accepted the recommendations without any changes, and they were gracious enough to put the recommendations forward. And I'd just like to take a minute to thank the members of the committee. Ron joined this year. Tressa Zielinski was a member at large. David Samuelson from the Nominations and Election Committee. Todd Haynes, State President, and Jeff Solheim, past President and board member. So thank you very much, and we really look forward to some lively discussion.
The floor is now open for 10 minutes of discussion on Proposal 20-01. To enter the speaking queue, you enter through the chat box on the left panel in Lumi. Once you're called upon to speak, please raise your hand in Zoom to be given audio and camera rights. Each speaker is limited to 1 minute. And just a reminder for those of you who are delegates gathered together in a group, if one of the members of your group is recognized to speak, please mute all of the devices in the room, turn their speaker volume all the way down, except for the one that's being used by the recognized speaker. And with that, we will get started. I'll recognize Carla Brim. Carla, go ahead and unmute when you're given, raise your hand in the participants tab in Zoom and unmute when you are given the prompt to do so.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. So I would like to speak against this amendment. We met I'm speaking on behalf of Washington State delegates, and we are against this recommendation as we feel is removing all of the membership's ability to select the board members. We are in support of the term limits and the unfilled vacancies. However, we feel by removing the ability to vote for our officers as well as the nominations elections committee. That is too drastic of a change. This has been brought forward at previous General Assemblies, and I believe that has resoundingly been voted against. The comments that I remember in previous assemblies as the membership and the delegate was against this thought of removing our ability to vote. Understand best practice, but however, we feel it was too much at one time. If you had recommended either just the nominations committee or only the officers, we may have been in support of that. However, such a drastic change feels as though the membership's ability to purchase the nominations committee or that, however, such a drastic change leaders is severely compromised with this recommendation. And I believe I have said all that I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. We'll now recognize Roseanne Money. Roseanne, go ahead and raise your hand under the Participants tab in Zoom. When prompted, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can. Yep, we can hear you, Roseanne.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yep, Roseanne, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Yes, Roseanne, we can hear you.
So we can go to the next one, and then if she gets back in.
Okay. I don't have anybody else now.
Oh, there was. See no one else in the queue.
Okay. So this morning is going to be working through some of the things. We're going to just continue. Roseanne, if you want to enter your name back into the speaking queue, you can. But otherwise, anybody else who wants to speak at this time, go ahead and join the speaking queue. We're just working through some audio issues right here. Okay, Daniel DiDonato, I recognize you to speak at this time. Go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel and unmute when prompted. All right, so as we're continuing to work on this, I see that we have Robin Powers Jarvis in the speaking queue. Robin, you can go ahead and raise your hand under the participants panel in the Zoom and unmute your microphone when you are prompted. Well, then I won't keep talking.
They can all hear each other. We're just not a part of the conversation. We got to go right, yeah. Right, exactly, right.
All right, so it sounds like everyone was unable to hear me for a little while. I think that our team behind the scenes here has gotten that figured out. So with that, we will return to our speaker queue. And I will recognize Joan Doyle. Joan, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel.
We'd already spoke, right, yeah.
And when prompted, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Hi, this is Joan Doyle from Massachusetts, and I'm speaking this morning on behalf of the Massachusetts delegation in opposition to this proposal. We feel that the board is given the sole right to decide who will serve as the officers, and we don't feel as if these changes would reduce the likelihood of conflicts of interest or disengagement. In fact, it may further exacerbate it. Further, the regional representation on the Nominations and Elections Committee is eliminated, and we would like to keep the current structure or see stronger language that ensures that regional diversity. We do acknowledge that there are problems with the current process of full member elections, such as low turnout and voting based on popularity with little knowledge of a person's work ethic. As an alternative, we could support the election of officers by the delegation with input from the board on the competency rating of the individuals who are seeking office. We are invested in this association and we want to retain our right to choose our leaders. We understand your rationale, but we can't support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am going to interrupt here for just a moment. Just one reminder, raising your hand in the Zoom participants panel should only be done after you are recognized to speak. That is not how you enter the speaking queue. To do that, to enter the speaking queue, you use the chat feature on the left side of the panel. We are going to restart the time for our 10 minutes of conversation on this discussion. Because of our technical difficulties, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to hear from as many people as possible on this. So with that, if you were in the speaking queue before, you can go ahead and just re-enter, and our staff are looking at that and taking care of that to make sure that we get you back in where you need to be. So with that, I will recognize again Roseanne Money. Roseanne, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel. Roseanne, if you're there, you can raise your hand in the participants panel and unmute yourself when prompted. If not, we'll move on to Joan Doyle. Joan, go ahead and go in the participants panel on the Zoom side of the Lumi and raise your hand.
Hi, I already talked just a moment ago.
Okay.
So I can restate if you'd like me to.
Just a clarification from staff. Did the delegation hear what Joan shared earlier? Okay, Joan, go ahead and restate that. It sounds like maybe some or all of the delegates were unable to hear what you had said.
Okay, sure. So I'm Joan Doyle, and I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Massachusetts delegation in opposition to the proposal. Under the proposal, the board is given the sole right to decide who will serve as the officers, and we don't feel as if these changes would reduce the likelihood of conflicts of interest or disengagement. In fact, it may further exacerbate it. Also, The regional representation on the Nominations and Elections Committee is eliminated, and we would like to keep the current structure or see stronger language that ensures that regional diversity. We know that there are problems with the current process of full member elections, like low turnout and voting based on popularity with little knowledge of a person's work ethic. As an alternative, we could support the election of officers by the delegation with input from the board on the competency ratings of the individuals who are seeking office. We are invested in this association and we want to retain our right to choose our leaders. We understand the rationale, but we cannot support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Dorothy Hindman. Dorothy, you can go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel. And when prompted, unmute yourself. All right, we'll now recognize Dorothy. Dorothy, go ahead and go into the participants panel in the Zoom part of Lumi and raise your hand. Oop, Dorothy, are you there?
It won't let me in here.
Okay, Dorothy, if you're with other delegates, please make sure that only your speakers are up and everyone else's speakers should be turned all the way down.
Hello? Can
Hi.
you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yes. You can. Yes. This is Dottie Heineman from the state of Florida, representing myself and my delegation. This is off in my delegation. I've been a member's proposal. I have attended the last 43 General Assemblies as a delegate and have been active in participating on all levels of the association. I don't like the fact that you want to take away my vote for officers, for any other members at large or the nominating committee. I feel that this is an infringement upon the membership's rights.
All right, thank you. I'll now recognize Kyle Smith. Kyle, go ahead and raise your hand and unmute yourself when prompted.
Start my video. Oh, hey. This is Kyle Smith from the state of North Carolina, representing myself. I just wanted to make the point that I think that most of the recommendations in this proposal, I mostly agree with, but I'm just concerned that this year with this format, such a substantial change to this organization, this is maybe not the appropriate year to pass through this proposal. So that's why I'll be voting against it.
Thank you, Kyle. I'll now recognize Robin Powers Jarvis. Robin, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants tab. And then when prompted, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, Robin. Robin, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants tab. Once you do that, our staff will be able to prompt you to unmute yourself. All right. The next speaker that I'll recognize is Daniel DiDonato. Daniel, raise your hand in the participants tab. Okay, so once you're recognized, you'll get a little pop-up that prompts you to unmute yourself. Please make sure that you are unmuting yourself when prompted. So Daniel, if you're able to unmute yourself. I think we still can't hear Daniel. Okay, it sounds like you might have an incorrect microphone selected in your audio settings on Zoom. All right, we'll move on here. I'll recognize Ellen Encapera. Go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel. And then when you're prompted, unmute yourself on Zoom. All right, I think we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, let me get this icon down. Oh, that's not a good picture. Okay. Hi, my name is Ellie Encapera. I'm with South Carolina ENA, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and also my delegation. We are not in favor of all of these bylaw proposals. Mostly the fact that, we as members feel that our rights are being taken away to select officers. We understand that we do elect our board members, but officers are even more important, and we feel that we would like a voice in that. I do want some clarification on the unfilled terms of those who have been elected to officer positions and still have remaining years to serve. Will that opportunity become a 3-year term for the next person who received the most votes, other than the board member positions that were available to the election? So I would certainly need some clarification. My last comment is that I think we should split the vote on these 4 pieces in case there are some that we support and some that are not supported. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, so we are going to add an additional 5 minutes as we're continuing to work through some of the technical difficulties. And then when that time is expired, we'll take a brief break just to make sure that everything is totally on track for the rest of the day to be a success. So with that, I will recognize Daniel DiDonato again. Daniel, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel, and when prompted, unmute your microphone. All right, seems like we're still having some difficulty with that mic. So with that, I'll recognize Jeff Solheim. Jeff, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel.
You hear me, Adam?
I can hear you, Jeff.
Hey, it's working. So this is Jeff Solheim, and I am actually on the leadership committee that presented these bylaw proposals. And I wanted to speak to everybody's concerns regarding the election of the officers. And just two quick things that I wanted to say on behalf of the leadership committee. And the first thing is, you know, one of the main reasons why we brought this forward is because it is considered a best practice, and we see a lot of associations moving towards the model that we're suggesting. So we're trying to remain with ENA kind of as a leader in the industry and doing what the other associations are moving towards. But secondly, I wanted to also speak as a previous member of the board to say that, you know, when we sit on the board, we really get the opportunity to see who has great leadership abilities and who comes prepared and who talks better than anybody else. And so by allowing the board to elect the officers, we can make sure that those people who have true leadership abilities within a board can serve in this position. And when each of you votes for a board member, you're voting for a potential future president. So your voice isn't taken away. When you vote for a board member, you just know that that person can become president, and you think that. But then the board is allowed to look at those people behind closed doors that are really strong leaders that may not be seen otherwise, and make sure that those people rise to run this $21 million organization. It takes great leadership to lead a big organization, and we want.
All right, thank you. The time has expired. With that, I will recognize Marianne Portoro. Marianne, go ahead and raise your hand under the participants section. And then when you receive the prompt, make sure to unmute yourself on the Zoom. All right, we'll recognize Jean Schuppe. Jean, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel and unmute yourself. Yep, go ahead, we can hear you.
This is Marianne Portoro from New York State. I'm sorry, I think can you hear me?
Yep, that's okay. Go ahead, Marianne.
All right, sorry about that. Marianne Portoro from New York State. I'm speaking on behalf of the New York State delegation and myself. We are opposed to this bylaw amendment at this particular time. We feel it takes away the membership-driven type of organization. We also feel that with this type of major change in the bylaws, that this is something that should be tabled at this moment to another General Assembly when we can all meet in person and be able to discuss this further with more time allotted to be able to discuss this and be able to group together and caucus together. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak at this time.
All right. Now we'll recognize Jean Shupe. You can raise your hand in the participants panel and unmute yourself when you're prompted. All right, so our time for this discussion that we had set has expired. So we'll mute all of the current participants on Zoom. We are going to go to a brief break, work through a few of the issues that we've had with the technology, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. 10 minutes from now, we'll see you all back here. Please just stay signed into the Lumi platform during the break, and we will be back soon. Thanks so much.
Good job.
Welcome back, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being so patient as we figure this out. During our meeting, it was mentioned, or our little meeting just a minute ago, it was mentioned a number of times that our goal with this is to make sure that we get this right so that we can hear from each and every one of you. So with that said, we need all of you to participate in that too. So I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping things that will hopefully help streamline this process, and then I'll tell you a little bit about a couple things that we're going to change on our end to also improve things moving forward. So please, if you have other programs open other than the Lumi app and the Zoom self-contained on your computer, please close out everything else. If you're having any issues with delay or problems, unmuting yourself or anything like that, close out those other programs. And then it was mentioned in the delegate competency and the Lumi overview, if possible, try to connect via an Ethernet cable instead of Wi-Fi. Obviously, that might be a little bit difficult to change right now, but if you are connected via Wi-Fi, try to be as close to your Wi-Fi router as possible. And then in the Zoom panel, there is an option. If you go into where you would unmute yourself, the little microphone icon, there's a little arrow next to that. If you press that arrow, you'll get a menu, and one of the options in that menu will be to test your speaker and microphone. When you do that test, we can't hear you, so you can go ahead and test that at any time. And so if you're intending to speak, please go in there and test that. It'll allow you to speak into your microphone and hear yourself back to make sure that all of that is working well. A couple of those housekeeping things, please don't raise your hand in the Zoom panel under the Participants tab unless you are recognized to speak. Our staff have to sift through all the raised hands to identify the person who should be speaking at that time. So please don't raise your hand unless you're recognized to speak. If you want to be recognized to speak, again, you're entering that into the chat box on the left-hand side in the Lumi part of your screen, not the chat box in Zoom or anything like that. So. And then regarding cameras, they continue, you still have the ability to turn your camera on when you're speaking. If you're having issues with delay or any sort of tech issues, we would recommend that you don't turn your camera on because it's just one more thing that can go wrong. And for those of you who have seen pop-ups to prompt you to turn your camera on when you're recognized, we'll no longer be doing that pop-up prompt. So. But turning your camera on is still an option as long as you have a good stable internet connection on your end. On our end, we're going to make a couple changes. The first change is that when we recognize somebody to speak, we're also going to mention who's sort of on deck or who is the next up person. So please, when you hear, that you're going to be the on deck or you're speaking next, go ahead and raise your hand at that time, and then the person who's currently recognized to speak will speak. That will give you a little bit more time to find the raise hand button, and our staff a little bit more time to be able to respond to that and make sure that we can unmute you when the time comes. Additionally, in the way that we do our timekeeping, so we know we have 10 minutes for each of the proposals, we are only going to run that clock when delegates are speaking. So our time waiting for the people to come on and unmute and all that will not be counted towards that 10-minute time. So I want to thank again, everybody, for being patient with this. I know that a lot of, we're all ER nurses. We're going to adapt and we're going to find a way to make it work well. So with that, I did check with Mike and the rest of our staff and everybody here. Like I said before, our utmost priority is to make sure that through this venue, we are able to hear the voices of our members on these important issues facing our organization and emergency nursing. So for that reason, we are going to extend one additional 5-minute time period for additional debate on GA, or additional conversation and discussion on GA 20-01 on the proposal to amend the ENA bylaws. So with that, we are going to get that started. The first person that we'll recognize is Lisa Burke. So Lisa, go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom. After Lisa, it will be Joanne Navaroli. So Joanne, you can go ahead and raise your hand right now as well, while we are getting Lisa all set up to go. All right, so Lisa, go under the participants panel in Zoom and raise your hand. Our staff will give you a prompt to unmute your microphone. At that time, you'll click unmute and then you can begin speaking. All right, and as we're getting that going, just a reminder, Joanne is on deck, Joanne Navaroli, so please raise your hand as well.
Okay, can you hear me?
Is this Lisa?
This is Lisa Burke.
Yeah, we can
I'm
hear
from
you.
the. Oh, good. My name is Lisa Burke. I'm from the state of Oregon. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm speaking pro this amendment. I feel like my voice is heard when I can elect our board. And I feel like the board members that work directly with these candidates have a better idea of their leadership skills and what it takes to run an organization as big as ENA. I feel like they are competent to work in our best interests, and that we can easier further our ENA goals when we have the most competent person that is elected by people that I've already elected to the board. So I feel very confident that the board works in our interests and that my voice is heard. So I'm for this proposed change.
Thank you. The person on deck, so go ahead and raise your hand, will be Nancy Shelton. Raise your hand at this time. And at this time, I recognize Joanne Navaroli. Joanne, you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're given that prompt. And then Nancy, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants tab of Zoom.
Hi, this is Joanne Navaroli from the state of Arizona. I'm speaking on behalf of the state of Arizona, and we are respectfully opposing the amendment changes to the bylaws. Regardless of best practice stated in the proposal, we feel that these changes will take away the rights of the members, and that the purpose of nursing organizations is to promote and provide evidence-based practice and education to its members so they can better serve their clients, i.e. the patients that we take care of, as well as being able to bring forth advocacy as we do as an organization. We feel that if there's an issue with, as Jeff stated, who talks better than anyone else, or an issue with performance, participation, preparations, or contributions, these members should be removed or mentored by the others on the board so that they might become better leaders. We oppose the not filling the 1 year term with less than 12 months or less, and that's all. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to recognize Tyler Babcock. Tyler, go ahead and raise your hand. Nancy, who I had mentioned, and anybody else, just a reminder, please make sure to go in and test your audio. For a few people who've tried to speak, it looks like there is no microphone or no audio set up. So go ahead and make sure that you use that test feature to make sure that your audio is working. And with that, I will recognize Tyler Babcock. And Tyler, go ahead and unmute yourself. And the person on deck is Daniel D. Donato. So Daniel, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants tab. Okay. If Penelope Blake can also raise her hand in the participants panel, as we're figuring a couple of these things out here. One thing, you may have received a pop-up in your browser asking permission for your browser to access your microphone and camera. When that pop-up pops up asking if it can use your microphone, you have to allow that, or you won't be able to speak. So if Penelope Blake can raise her hand, it looks like Nancy, Tyler, and Daniel are all don't have an audio device at this point. So Penelope Blake, raise your hand in the participants panel and unmute yourself when prompted.
Hello, this is Penelope Blake. Were you waiting for me?
Yep, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, Penelope, you can go ahead.
Okay. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and the Florida delegation. This is Penelope Blake. Our delegation feels that we cannot support these amended bylaws as they're being proposed. In addition to corroborating what so many other people have said, and that we feel that perhaps it may be taking away some of the grassroots members' ability to determine who our leaders are. We also have a few points that we would like to bring up, in that when this was presented, it was presented as being best practices of many of similar organizations that are professional organizations. And because of the fact that I myself and one of my other colleagues in Florida are very much into evidence-based practice, we did some due diligence and researched this. And what we found was that AACM, the ANA, AORN, and the Canadian Med-Surg Association all currently choose their executive boards in the same manner that we currently do as well. We feel like these organizations are very much similar to ours in their purpose and in their mission and in their vision. And therefore, we feel that if they are finding that this is working for them, we don't see a reason to change the current process that we utilize. Also, I would just like to put an aside in here. We also received information that every member had been sent an email by the task force asking us for our input into these changes. Several of us in Florida did go back through our emails back to January. None of us ever received that email. We received an email as far as directions on how to submit resolutions and directions on how to submit bylaws.
The time for this, the time for consideration or discussion of this has expired. So again, just a reminder, we're going to do our best to recognize a person who's on deck. Please go in and test your devices in that menu to test your speaker and microphone, and allow access if you get a pop-up to access your microphone. With that, we will move on to Proposal 20-02, which is titled Hemorrhage Control Education in Schools, and has been authored by Brannon Gillies, Shanoa Hansen, and Danelle Brazil. Brannon, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel. Once we get you connected here, you'll have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. So raise your hand in the participants tab, and when you are prompted, please unmute your microphone.
Adam, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, how are y'all today? My name is Brannon Gillis from Louisiana. I'm speaking to Resolution GA 20-02. It's estimated that 3 million American kids are exposed to shootings and their aftermath yearly. Approximately 2,900 children and teens die from gunshot wounds. 15,600 more are shot and injured. In 2020, so far, there have been 44 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 12 deaths and 20 injuries. This past March is the first March, thank you, COVID, since 2002 without a school shooting. Education and training of the public is imperative. Often after a school shooting or other traumatic incident, first responders are delayed in reaching victims, and death from exsanguination can occur within 5 minutes. With the education and training of lay people, more lives could be saved, and a great place to start is in our schools. In 1996, a review of battlefield deaths led to protocols targeting hemorrhage control. Over the ensuing decade, the U.S. military equipped all deployed forces with tourniquets, resulting in an 85% decrease in deaths attributed to limb hemorrhage. This battlefield lesson, along with lessons from the Sandy Hook elementary shooting, resulted in the strong advocacy of the Harvard Consensus and bleeding control courses like Stop the Bleed. Hemorrhage control education and training is not only important for incidents of school shootings and violent crime. A study conducted in 2014 after the Boston Marathon bombing found that 66 patients ages 50 to 71 experienced at least one extremity injury. There were a total of 27 tourniquets used, and all were improvised. The mortality rate from that was 0. In Georgia, a school nurse saved the life of a 9-year-old using her brand new Stop the Bleed kit after the child fell, breaking her arm and severing an artery. The ENA is viewed as the primary provider of leadership, education, injury prevention, and research. This resolution asks the ENA to support hemorrhage control education in schools in collaboration with ACEP and other stakeholders. To quote Margaret Mead, an American cultural anthropologist, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." We sincerely hope you will adopt this.
Thank you, Brannon. With that, we will open our 10 minutes of discussion on this proposal. So if Sheila Silva and Julie Rossi can both raise your hands in the participant panel. Sheila will be recognized first. Julie Rossi, you are on deck. So then Sheila, go ahead and when you're prompted, unmute your microphone. And once you're unmuted, you can just start speaking. All right, we will move on to Julie Rossi at this time. Julie, you can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted. Oh yeah, and David McDonald is on deck. So David, please raise your hand in the participants panel.
I am unmuted now. This is Sheila. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, go ahead, Sheila.
Sorry, it would not let me unmute myself until just now. So my name is Sheila Silver, and I'm speaking on behalf of Massachusetts Emergency Nurses Association, and we are in favor of this resolution based on the statistics quoted by the author of this resolution and ongoing injuries and deaths related to school shootings. We definitely support this. Having taught this Stop the Bleed course to hundreds of high school students personally, I find that they welcome this information. They're able to learn and retain it, and it's well received by students and faculty alone. So we support this resolution.
Thank you. So we will recognize Julie Rossi. At this time, you can unmute. And if Lori Carnes can also raise your hand in the participants tab. I'm currently recognizing Julie Rossi. Okay, moving on to David McDonald. You can go ahead and unmute at this point. Lori Carnes, please make sure if you haven't already to raise your hand in the participants tab. And recognizing David McDonald. All right, Lori Carnes, go ahead and unmute when given the prompt.
This is David McDonald. I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe it's coming through now. I just got the link through.
Okay, recognizing David now. Go ahead, David.
Great. This is David McDonald from the state of North Carolina, speaking on behalf of myself. I am speaking in support of the resolution, but I don't think it goes far enough. I think it's very tailored to high school students, or it doesn't really specify students, but it definitely says high school. I think this can be really expanded to include any schools. So staff starting at elementary school all the way up through high school. As well as, if you wanted to specifically target a student population, potentially starting at high school, but I'm sure every state's run classes with middle school students in them. We've definitely seen success at that level as well. But I definitely think this resolution warrants support, but I think it needs to be expanded beyond the narrow high school window that it currently is.
All right, thank you. Currently recognizing Lori Carnes. Lori, go ahead and unmute. And then if Larry Lookingbill and Catherine Bomer can both please raise your hands in the participant panel. But now recognizing Larry Lookingbill, you can unmute when prompted. Lori Carnes, you can unmute at this time.
Hi, this is Larry Lookingbill. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yep, go ahead, Larry. And Lori, be ready.
Thank you. This is Larry Lookingbill from Texas, speaking on behalf of myself. I agree with the previous motion that, high school students sure is great, but we can push this all the way back to middle school, elementary school. Everybody is trained to stop the bleed will save more lives. So I'm in favor of this, but we need to add that language to the other schools and the bystanders. my goal would be to have, Stop the Bleed right next to all the AEDs. Any chance to save lives is the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lori Carnes, you can go ahead and unmute at this time. And if Catherine Baumer, Cheryl Marcel, and Lisa Lyle will all raise your hand in the participant panel, but currently recognizing Lori Carnes. Lori, if you're able to unmute, go ahead and try that now. Okay, moving on to Catherine Baumer. Catherine, you can go ahead and unmute now when you're prompted. And then
Hello,
Cheryl.
can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead. Yep, we were able to hear you.
This is Catherine Baumer speaking from Pennsylvania on behalf of myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. On this bill, I have been a Stop the Bleed instructor since this came out in our area back in 2016. I've worked very closely with a lot of schools, and again, as the other speakers have stated, this does not go far enough. We may not be able to put a tourniquet in every school, but if we can put in a bleeding control kit, because when the pressure's on, a lot of folks are not going to remember how to use a tourniquet, but they'll remember how to pack a wound. So again, bringing this into the elementary centers, the middle schools, high schools, colleges, daycares, anywhere where there's students is definitely something that needs to be thought of and addressed. Because again, I work in a semi-rural area, and there's a lot of times where it's the lead in getting care to these folks. So the more resources that we have available out into the public areas, the more lives that we're going to save. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Cheryl Marcel. Cheryl, you can go ahead and unmute. And then Lisa Lyle and Penelope Blake, if you have not raised your hand yet, go ahead and do that now. But Cheryl, you're recognized.
This is Cheryl Marcel. I'm from New York State, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I support this. However, there's a lot of pushback from teachers and from school nurses saying it's not my job. And I think we need to work in collaboration with, I'm not sure, maybe the school nurse association, the teachers unions, in order to get them on board with us, because they are afraid.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll recognize Lisa Lyle, and Penelope Blake and Heather Lynn Salata are on deck. So Lisa, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay. Moving to Penelope Blake. Penelope, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Heather Lynn Salata should be on deck. Please raise your hand.
All right, this is Penelope Blake. Can you hear me?
We can.
You guys tell me yes? Yes. Okay, Lori Carnes was unable to unmute, so I'm going to give the mic over to her so that she can speak.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you for bringing forth this important and impactful topic that we all share a passion for. We support this education as the State of Florida Council in high schools as well as other levels, as others have said, and appropriate students and staff for those groups. We know that states are in various stages of implementing this information across our country. We support this as an ENA position statement, which is what I feel has been requested. We're not in support of recreating the wheel, if you will, with money to do another course or implement it that way. We do love the intention of this. If a position statement helps support legislative agendas further for us to implement these things, we do join these efforts and we welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll recognize Heather Lynn Salata. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. And if Santana Olvera can please raise your hand in the participants panel. Go ahead, Heather.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
All right. So my name is Heather Lynn Slott. I'm speaking on behalf of the state of New Jersey. We are in support of this resolution. We also echo what the previous speakers have said about expanding the resolution to include other schools and partnering with other organizations, not necessarily reinventing the wheel. School shootings have become an epidemic, and we support any initiative that could provide life-saving care to those directly impacted by this. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll recognize Santana Olvera. Santana, you can go ahead and unmute. And at this time, if Julie Rossi or Lisa Lyle are able to, go ahead and raise your hands in the participant panel. But you can go ahead, Santana.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is Santana Olvera from the Texas delegation, speaking on behalf of myself. And I just would like to first say I am all for this resolution, and thank you for the authors for bringing it forward. We here in Texas are fortunate to have regional action councils, which we partner with heavily, myself included, for instructing Stop the Bleed. So very much in support of this resolution. There was some question about some of the wording, line 35 and 29 from some of our delegation about public school versus private school, because we do have some private and public funded schools, especially in my area as well. An education training for high school students. So the verbiage, just kind of going back to just some of the verbiage to make sure this is accessible and ability for not just the public, but also private schools within the area, because I believe all schools should really have this. So just those few points to the authors and to the resolutions committee to maybe perhaps amend that wording to include both types of schools. So thank you.
Thank you. So Lisa Lyle and Julie Rossi, if you're with us, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel in Zoom. And then Matthew Powers, go ahead and raise your hand as well. And at this time, I'll recognize Matt Powers. So Matt, you can go ahead and unmute. Again, Lisa and Julie, if you're there, raise your hand. Go ahead,
all right,
Matt.
Welcome everyone. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Matt.
Okay, great. Anyways, I just want to really appreciate this resolution coming forward. I just want to kind of back up for a minute. So in 2015, we were, as ENA, part of the coalition with 40 other organizations on Stop the Bleed. In end of 2015, we did put a letter in the connection. There was another one in 2018. There's also an infographic that was available, I believe, in 2018 as well, that ENA supported. I do believe that maybe a topic brief or something like that, we can look back and see what the best way to do that. I do also agree with the legislative components of this, but I just want everyone to know that there has been work done behind the scenes with ENA on the Stop the Bleed campaign. So thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, if Tabitha can raise your hand, Tabitha Sylvester, please raise your hand in the participants panel in Zoom, and we will recognize you to speak. You can unmute when prompted, Tabitha. And that's Tabitha Sylvester.
Good morning. This is Tabitha Sylvester from Texas, speaking on behalf of myself. I just want to echo some of the concerns too from Texas, and also from some of my Texas delegates, as well as from some of the other states, about the language of high school students, as well as public school and the non-inclusion of private school students. Also, as a school shooting survivor myself, I just want to make sure that we're being inclusive in recognizing that younger students can also be inclusive and be helpful in these situations. And as a former school nurse, having all hands on deck and having anybody that can do anything in a moment.
All right, thank you. Again, if Lisa, Lyle, or Julie Rossi are on, please raise your hand in the participants tab. Otherwise, at this time, there's nobody in the speaking queue. We'll give just another moment here for Julie or Lisa. All right. So with that, we will close our discussion on Proposal 20-02, and we will move on to Proposal 20-03. If the author of this proposal can please raise your hand in the Zoom chat. 20-03 is titled Request for Emergency Nurses Association Organization to Facilitate Collaboration with the Occupational Therapist Organizations, and is authored by Joan Soames. Joan, you're going to have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Go ahead, and if you haven't, raise your hand in the participant panel, and when you're prompted, you can unmute your microphone and you will have 2 minutes. All right, Joan Soames. Joan, are you able to hear us? It sounds like we're not getting any audio through from you. We see that your mic is unmuted. Next to the little microphone icon, there's a little arrow. If you hit the up arrow, if you go into the test your speakers and microphone, it should give you the option to choose the microphone that's in your computer. Oh, I think we have you now.
Hi, Adam, can you hear me? I'm on somebody else's computer.
Yep, we can hear you now, Joan.
Great, thanks. Sorry about that. We've been trying to troubleshoot it here for a while. Okay. Mr. President, member of the board, the assembly, and guests, I'm Joni Soames. I would like to propose Resolution 2003, request for ENA to facilitate collaboration with the occupational therapists organizations. And this is the reason why. For the last several years, I've been working with my home state of Minnesota's Department of Public Safety and Office of Traffic Safety on statewide injury prevention project to decrease crashes and fatalities involving older drivers. During the process of identifying ways to address this issue, I had the opportunity to meet and work with occupational therapists and driver rehabilitation specialists, or DRSs, who specialize in assessing and retraining drivers who are having challenges due to aging or medical conditions. As we shared, we realized our professional organizations have injury prevention as a goal, not just related to driving skills, but also to mobility and fall prevention. The OTs I spoke with were not aware of ENA's programs or the assessment skills ED nurses possess. I honestly had not been aware of programs that OTs had in place. I polled ENA members to determine if I was just living in a black hole or to see if others were aware of or advocating for referrals to an OT or DRS. Response was minimal. And I'm not sure if this happens in your department, but many nurses noted they were not aware of what an OT or a DRS does. I'm not asking that we create more screens for ED nurses to do, but that nurses become aware of what OTs and DRSs can do, and then after using nursing assessment skills, consider requesting a referral to a resource that could help improve patient outcomes. I am asking ENA to reach out, obtain vetted information from the OT organizations that can be shared with ED nurses about their injury prevention programs, like safe driving and fall prevention, while ENA shares similar information with them so members of each organization can reach out and collaborate with the other on safe practice and safe care. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. So we're about to start our 10 minutes of discussion on Proposal 20-03. I will go ahead and invite Colleen Desai, Ellen Ruha, and Deborah Skeen to all please raise your hand in the participants panel. Ellen and Deborah, you'll be on deck. And first we will recognize Colleen Desai. So Colleen, you can raise your hand if you haven't already, and then when you're prompted, go ahead and unmute your microphone and you can begin. Okay, so it appears, Colleen, that you're unmuted. There might be an issue with which microphone is selected. So we will move to Ellen, and we'll come back if we think we got that figured out for Colleen. So Ellen Ruha, you can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ellen.
I don't know why. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. This is Ellen Ruja. I'm from the wonderful state of South Carolina with our delegation here in Kiowa. I am not totally against our organization to facilitate any collaboration with any of the therapists, but just know that occupational therapists cannot by themselves, we cannot make a referral to them directly. They have to either be under a PT or a speech therapy order. So most of the times, and I've been in case management for 10 years, we usually have physical therapy go out to the home and do home safety. And if needed, we certainly can order OT with PT being the lead. Also nursing. So I'm a little concerned that we're looking at this and just saying occupational therapy. They're a great discipline and certainly hands down, but the physical therapists are the ones that really we can order and do that. Occupational therapy cannot go out in the home by themselves.
Thank you. With that, we'll recognize Deborah Skeen. Deborah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself when prompted.
Okay, good morning from Denver. This is Deborah Skeen. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and the Colorado State Council. We believe that this resolution will increase the collaboration between OT and emergency room nurses, and it will help promote injury prevention activities. So we support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen Desai, we're going to go ahead and try to make sure that you're unmuted now. We'll recognize you at this time. If you can unmute your microphone. And again, it looks like you're unmuted, but we're still not getting the audio. So again, just a reminder to everybody who plans on speaking today, please go into that test your speaker and microphone setting. It sounds like we're starting to get some audio maybe coming through for Colleen. So go ahead, Colleen. Colleen, if you have other people in the other delegates in the room with you, their speakers need to be muted. You can have your device's speakers turned on, and then you can unmute and you can speak without feedback.
It's Colleen.
Hey, Colleen, we're still getting feedback from you. If you could just make sure that any other speakers are muted from any other devices in the room. Only your device's speakers can be on. And to mute those other speakers, just go directly to those speakers and those devices and turn the volume all the way down. You shouldn't be able to hear me talking through any of those devices, only through your device, Colleen. So we'll give you just one more minute to try that again. We'll send you that unmute option, and go ahead. I think we have you now, Colleen. All right. Well, with that, we have nobody else in our speaking queue. So we will close our discussion on Proposal 20-03. Will the authors who will be speaking for 20-04 please raise your hand in the participants panel? Proposal 20-04 is titled Patient Screening in the Emergency Department. This is authored by Jean Prail, Stacy Savage, Kathy Van Dusen, and Andy Foley. Jean, you're going to have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. If you haven't already, raise your hand in the participants panel, and then when prompted, unmute your devices. And you can go ahead, Jean. Jean, you're unmuted now. Can you hear us? If so, you can go ahead. And Jean, you can try the little arrow menu next to the microphone button and make sure that the correct microphone is selected on your device. All right, so we're still not getting anything through from the authors or from Jean. If any of the other authors of this proposal, GA 20-04, are on, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel if you're willing to speak to the resolution here.
This is Andy Foley. Can you hear me?
Yes, Andy, we can hear you. You can go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you to the delegation. I want to admit that I prepared nothing for this. So off the cuff, I want to acknowledge the authors and Jean primarily, and also mention that this resolution has the opportunity to affect every single emergency nurse, every single shift with almost every patient. What we're looking for is a statement from ENA, amongst other things, that would really give guidance about what screenings should be done where during emergency care, during triage, during emergency care before disposition. We recognize that many of the screenings that are being done have absolute value to our patients, but because of electronic health record builds, because of forms, these screenings are being asked to be done right up front. Let's ask that in triage, and many of them are not required for a screening triage decision. Again, we would look forward to your conversation, and thank you for letting me speak off the cuff. Jean, I hope I did you justice.
Thank you, Andy. I think that was pretty good for being called on at the last second. So with that, we are going to go ahead and start our 10 minutes of discussion on GA 20-04. I'll ask that Jeannie Ulmer, Charlene Stab, and Jedediah Peterson all please raise your hands in the participants panel on Zoom. Charlene and Jedediah, you'll be on deck. And I recognize Jean Ulmer at this time. When prompted, you can unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hello, this is Jean Ulmer. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jean.
My name's Jean Ulmer. I'm a delegate from Massachusetts. I'm speaking on behalf of Massachusetts. We are in favor of this resolution. We agree that the ENA should promote an evidence-based process for decisions regarding screening during triage or decisions that impact the emergency care other than triage. However, we feel that screening tools need to be pertinent and respectful of the time available for emergency care. This should support our mission, our vision, our strategic initiatives, and we feel screening tools are important, but should have an impact on the outcomes of the patient care throughout the emergency department. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, if we have Jedediah and Chantel on deck, Charlene Stab, you can unmute when you're prompted. Jedediah and Chantel, please make sure your hands are raised in the participants panel. Go ahead, Charlene.
Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this very important resolution. As a state council, we wholly support this resolution to go forward. We feel strongly that the triage nurse's role is to focus on the emergent triage for the event the patient is coming to, rather than an assessment for other important but yet not emergent needs at the time. The additional assessments that can be done after the emergent reason for care is sought. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Jedediah Peterson. You can go ahead and unmute when prompted. Chantel Knox and Larry Lookingbill, I have you both on deck. Please make sure your hand is raised in the participants panel. If we have you, you can go ahead, Jedediah.
Hi, it's Jed Peterson coming to you from my daughter's bedroom in New Hampshire. I want to speak in favor of this. I had a computer malfunction last night. The resolution's well written. I think there's an additional risk exposure to the triage nurse when we have these onerous screenings that if nobody can complete them to the satisfaction of the hospital policy, then the triage nurse is at risk of selective enforcement. and this, as we know, can become a problem when nobody is complying. The people who are penalized for not complying is not always even, and it allows a vulnerability for otherwise good nurses who are not adversely affecting patient care to be selected out by management. And that's a risk we don't need to accept.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Chantel Knox. Chantel, you can go ahead and unmute when prompted. I have Larry Lookingbill and Karen Kloppel on deck. Please go into the participants tab and raise your hand. And at this time, you can go ahead, Chantel.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Chantel, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Maryland State Council, ENA. We are opposed to GA 2004 as it's currently written. We agree with the resolve lines through 27. However, lines 29 through 44, we would support combining the wording to be a little more concise and provide better guidance. The wording should reflect that the ENA promotes using the evidence-based process when making decisions about what screening tools should be used in the ED. In addition, the screening tool should also have some type of demonstrated reliability and validity. And thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to recognize Larry Lookingbill. And if Karen Kloppel and Jean Schuppe can please raise your hands in the participant panel. You'll be on deck. Recognizing Larry Lookingbill, you can be unmuted at this point. And Larry, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is Larry Lookingbill from Texas, speaking on behalf of myself. I am in favor of this resolution. Triage is just a process, 3 to 5 minutes. We have to make a quick decision. We don't need all this extra baloney to go in there. That should be for the primary nurse and after gets patient stabilized. So I'm in favor of this resolution. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I'll recognize Karen Kloppel. Karen, you can go ahead and unmute when prompted. And then we'll have Jean Schuppe on deck, as well as Frida Lyon. So if you can both please raise your hand in the participant panel. At this time, Karen can go ahead. All right. Karen Kloppel, if you're able to unmute at this point. Okay, it looks like you are unmuted. So again, you'll need to go into those settings to select the correct microphone. We will move to Jean Schuppe. Go ahead, Jean. We'll have Frida Lyon and Heather Lynn Salata on deck. Please raise your hand in the participant panel. And Jean can go ahead now. And just a reminder, oh, I think we might have you, Jean. And just a reminder for anybody who is having technical difficulties that we've encountered so far, there's the live chat assistance feature on the left-hand panel. Please reach out to them. We have a room full of staff here that are working on responding to those and helping us navigate some of these challenges. Okay, let's see. Do we have Karen? Karen, if you're there, you can go ahead. Or Jean, is that Jean that I hear on the line? Either Karen or Jean can just start talking if you're with us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, who is
Can you
this?
hear me now?
We can hear you.
This is Karen Kloppel.
Okay, Karen, go ahead.
This is Karen Costa from Washington State. I am speaking on behalf of Washington State delegation, and we are supportive of Resolution GA 2004. We are very much in support of what emergency nurses being able to do what nurses need to accomplish in triage. We do not need to satisfy the bean counters requirements for various screenings that their management may or may not decide is necessary. It would be wonderful for ENA to come out with an evidence-based practice of what screening tools are actually beneficial for the nurse and the patient to benefit the patient. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to recognize Frida Lyon. I'll have Heather Lynn Salata and Michael Moon. Please raise your hand in the participants panel. You're on deck, and at this time, Frida's recognized. You can go ahead and unmute, and you can go ahead.
Thank you. This is Frida Lyon. I hope that you can hear me. It looks like from my microphone you can. I'm coming to you from the great state of Georgia, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my state delegation. We are in favor of the resolution GA 20-04 with one caveat. We would like to have it called out that infectious disease screening remain. It doesn't always apply for whether or not you change the severity of the patient's acuity, but it is very important to keep our staff and our patients safe. So we would just like another whereas that makes sure that we maintain the infectious disease screening at the front desk. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Heather Lynn Salata. You can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted. Michael Moon, please have your hand raised in the participant panel. Julie Rossi, you're also on deck. Please have your hand raised in the participant panel. And Jean Shoup, if you're with us, can you please raise your hand in the participants panel? But with that, we will currently recognize Heather Lynn Salata.
Hi, this is Heather Lynn Salata. I'm speaking on behalf of the New Jersey State Council. We are in support of GA 2004. We agree that there should be a standard across all care settings when it regards to screenings. Using an evidence-based practice to guide our workflow is important. It's not always possible for the triage nurse to gather this information at triage due to time, communication issues, or privacy issues. And this would allow nurses to prioritize care for our patients over just mandatory box checking. Thank you.
All right. So I will currently recognize Michael Moon. Michael, you can unmute yourself when you're prompted. If Julie Rossi, Jean Shoup, and Sally Snow can all have your hands raised in the participant panel. And you can go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam. Is it audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, Michael.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to speak as a patient. Okay, great. I want to speak to you as a nurse who was a patient in the emergency department with a fairly serious medical condition. And going through the triage process, I will say that it was a little frustrating having the focus be on completing the checklist rather than actually focusing on what was going on. I am in favor of looking at this. I do have a little bit of concern with lines 32 and 33 because I think many of these checklists need to be done before discharge, but I'm not necessarily sure they all need to be done in triage. But definitely looking at the evidence is the best approach.
All right. Thank you. The time has expired. With that, I will recognize Julie Rossi. Julie, you can go ahead and unmute at this time. I'll have Sally Snow. You can raise your hand. You'll be on deck, as well as Chelsea Collins. You can raise your hand in the participants panel. And at this time, recognizing Julie Rossi. Julie, you can go ahead. Okay, and at this time, it looks like Julie does not have any audio set up. So we're going to try to recognize Jean Shoup again. If you're on now, Jean, you can unmute. Okay, it looks like you're unmuted, Jean. But we are not hearing you. All right, so we will keep moving through here. At this time, I'll recognize Sally Snow. Sally, you can unmute when prompted here. We'll have Chelsea Collins and Sandra Rush have your hands raised in the participants panel. You're on deck, and you can go ahead, Sally.
Sally Snow, speaking on behalf of myself and the Texas delegation. We are in support of this resolution with one concern. The whereas and the resolve that discusses no screening outside of the presenting problem has the potential to exclude victims of child abuse and potential human trafficking victims. So if there could be an accommodation made for those kinds of screenings that would certainly in triage be valuable to identifying child abuse and human trafficking, we would be in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, I will recognize Chelsea Collins. You can unmute when prompted. Sandra Rush and Teresa Crowell, please raise your hands. You'll be on deck. Raise your hands in the participant panel. But Chelsea, you can go ahead.
Hi, this is Chelsea speaking on behalf of Jeannie Shoup, since she can't unmute for whatever reason. She wanted to go ahead and say that Colorado ENA is in support of this resolution, and a lot of people are having issues with raising their hands just also. And then another comment I wanted to state was, can we get some information from Lisa Wolf on this as well?
Do we have Lisa on?
I'm here.
That. Okay, great. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, super. So this resolution really focuses in on the things that we don't like about triage. However, I think that there are a lot of questions that need to be asked at the initial encounter that may or may not have anything to do with the presentation. And that's things that people have already brought up: infectious diseases, human trafficking, intimate partner violence, pregnancy status, right? All these things kind of get punted or included based on the judgment of the nurse. And I would suggest to you all that we all have very different ideas about what is relevant to the patient presentation. So in order to offer evidence-based recommendations about which questions are actually critical, that is an enormous amount of research, which frankly, I don't mind doing because that's what I do. But you're talking about a study about almost every single question that we ask that is not directly related to what the patient presentation is. So it's an enormous amount of work, and I don't think I would feel comfortable issuing any evidence-based statements without any evidence, right? So all we kind of have is our own frustration with this process, and it's going to take a while to untangle it. So thanks for letting me speak to this.
Thank you. With that, I will now recognize Sandra Rush. If you can go ahead and unmute. Teresa Crowell and Cheryl Marcel, you can raise your hand in the participants panel. You'll be on deck. But Sandra, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Well, I am Sandra Rush. I am speaking on behalf of myself, and I am a delegate from South Dakota, and I live in central South Dakota in a very rural area. And I just wanted to speak to reminding the delegation that triage is a process, not a place. as a critical access nurse, it's not the process of going through the triage nurse and then the bedside nurse, but you're the one that's going to do it all. I do like the heart of this resolution, and I am in favor of this resolution, but I just wanted to remind the entire delegation to not forget about that triage is a process, not a place. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Teresa Crowell. Teresa, you can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted. Cheryl Marcel, you can have your hand raised for being on deck in the participants panel. Go ahead, Teresa.
Hi, this is Teresa Crowell from Washington State, speaking on behalf of myself. And when I read this resolution, I got really excited because I felt like it gave a platform for staff nurses to be able to go to their management and just have a discussion about what is triage at that higher administration level of nurses that might not understand triaging. And I am in support of it. I do like all the conversation around that we need to make sure that we're still doing the correct screening that is appropriate in the emergency department, but I just don't want everything that's mandatory for screening to be in the triage section. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. I'll recognize Cheryl Marcel. Cheryl, you can unmute when you're prompted, and I'll ask that Jean Prail, you can go ahead and raise your hand in the participants panel. You'll be on deck, but Cheryl, you can go ahead.
This is Cheryl Marcel. I'm from New York State, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. That I think triage is a rapid evaluation place and is not a place to check boxes. Rather, we need to be validating their concern and taking action, and that's not the place, is in triage. I think that the primary nurse is validating the patient's answer, and taking action means much more. I approve of this resolution, and I finished.
All right, thank you. And with that, time for consideration of this, or discussion of this, has expired.
Give her a minute.
One. Okay. And so it sounds like we got Jean on as the author here. And so we're, because of the technical difficulties before, we're going to give Jean 1 minute to speak to the resolution at this time. So you can go ahead, Jean, unmute your microphone if you're on, and the floor is yours. I think we have you, Jean. You can go ahead. We can hear your background noise, Jean. Are you talking? All right. So with that, the time is up for discussion of this proposal. We are halfway there. It's been an interesting morning for all of us. I want to thank all the delegates and everybody involved today, again, for being patient. We've been able to have some really great conversation in the first half of these reference hearings. So we are, again, working our way through our first ever virtual General Assembly, and we are now going to take a 15-minute break, and we will reconvene at 10:40 Central Time. I just had to do some math on the fly there. So we'll see you all back here in about 15 minutes at 10:40 Central Time. And please stay signed into the Lumi platform during the break. Again, this will just help minimize delays in promptly resuming at 10:40. So we will see you all soon.
Nice job. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Adam, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. So we are going to jump right back into our open reference hearings. We're going to be starting with Proposal 20-05. If the author representative for that can please raise their hand now in the participants panel. And just a reminder for everybody to do all the things we've been saying. If you're continuing to have technical difficulties, please, contact the live chat on the left-hand side. Our staff are there to help you work through those challenges, and we will continue as we've been going along. So with that, Proposal 20-05 is titled Recognition of Emergency Clinical Assistant Technician. This is authored by Andy Foley and Jenna Hannity. Andy, you'll have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Andy, you can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted.
Thank you, Adam. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Fantastic. My fellow delegates, my name is Andy Foley, and I am a delegate from Idaho. Thank you for considering the resolution focused on recognition of our Emergency Clinical Assistant Technician, or ECAT, colleagues. Despite our ECATs have a specialized role quite different from their pre-hospital, inpatient, or long-term care colleagues. In each of those areas of specialty, unlicensed assistive personnel enjoy formal recognition events. In some emergency departments around the globe, ECATs celebrate emergency care during Emergency Nurses Week or healthcare during Hospital Week. We have heard that many ECATs receive no formal, meaningful recognition or specialty celebrations at all. The goal of this resolution is to formally and actively recognize those members of the emergency team who are often lumped in with emergency nurses during celebrations. Our ECAT teammates have role responsibilities unique to emergency care and are highly valued yet minimally recognized in a specific way. Some of them are already ENA members, and many of them go on to become emergency nurses. Meaningful recognition enhances both retention and engagement, which are both areas of focus for our organization. If ENA doesn't advocate and recognize the unique and specialized contributions of our clinical assistant technician teammates, who will? Jenna Hannity, Washington State delegate, and my co-author and I were asked what we mean by formally and actively recognize. To be honest, we're not certain. At the recommendation of the Resolutions Committee, we added the suggestion of an Emergency Technician Day to the resolved clause, but that was one example. We look forward to hearing other thoughts or suggestions. Thank you for your consideration of this resolution.
All right, thank you. We're now going to open the floor for 10 minutes of discussion on Proposal 20-05. You can enter the speaking queue by using the quick terms. And at this time, I'll have David DiNenno. Please raise your hand in the participants panel, as well as Jacqueline De Silva. Jacqueline, you'll be on deck. And David, I'll recognize you now. You can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
So my name is David DiNenno, and I'm representing the Massachusetts Emergency Nurses Association. And we are in support of this resolution. It is, often use the analogy that our emergency department is a car, and that if we don't recognize all the parts and all the parts aren't working, then we don't go anywhere. Our ED techs are an intricate part of our system, and they should be recognized. And again, they're not just patient care assistants from other areas. We specifically this year raised the elevation of the term to specifically name them ED techs because they have a unique set of skills that they do. So as a group, we are definitely in support of recognizing them. And, what better day or what better week to do it than Emergency Nurses Week? Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll recognize Jacqueline De Silva. Jacqueline, you can unmute when you're prompted.
This is Jackie. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I just wanted to speak in support of this motion. I started out as an ED tech, and I want to say thank you to Andy for putting this forward. I think that it's very important that we recognize our ED techs, because I agree, many of them do go on to be ED nurses. And I just wanted to voice my support. Thank you.
Thank you. As of now, there's nobody else in the speaking queue. If you would like to participate in the discussion here, go ahead and enter through the chat on the left-hand side to get your name in the queue. We'll give anybody a moment that wants to jump in. All right, so I will ask that Charlene Drelot raise your hand in the participants panel, as well as Lisa Burke. Lisa, you'll be on deck to speak. And at this time, I'll recognize Charlene Drelot to speak. You can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, this is Charlene Drelot speaking on behalf of myself. I'm from the Rhode Island State Council. I really agree that this is a necessary measure. We have tons of emergency techs throughout the country, but if we didn't have them, we would have no one in the emergency department. So they do deserve their own recognition. And I too agree that it should be during Nurses Week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This time I'll recognize Lisa Burke. Lisa, you can unmute when you're prompted. And Heather Linsalata, please raise your hand in the participants panel. You'll be on deck. Take it away, Lisa.
Hi, my name's Lisa Burke, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself from the state of Oregon. The ED techs that work in the department I do are specific to our own unit. They've recently been declassified as CNAs. They don't get any CNA hours towards their exam, towards their certification. So now many of them recently have felt like they either need to leave the emergency department in order to stay a CNA, or if they're really, motivated to stay in the ER, then they know that they're going on without any certification hours. This has been a huge burden on them. And I feel like if we as an organization recognize their unique role and contribution, it will help to solidify them as being a valued member of our team. And I fully support this resolution. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Heather Linsalata. Heather, you can go ahead and unmute. And then I'll ask John Fraley and Cheryl Marcel to go ahead and raise your hand in the participants tab. You'll be on deck, and we'll recognize Heather now. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Heather Linsalata speaking on behalf of the New Jersey State Council. I'll just keep this short and sweet. The State Council is in favor of 2005. Like the speakers before have said, we feel like it's important to recognize everyone that participates in a team, and we could not do what we do if it wasn't for the ED techs that support us every day.
Thanks, Heather. John Fraley, I'll recognize you now. You can unmute when you're prompted. And I'll ask Cheryl Marcel and Sally Snow to go ahead and raise your hand. You're on deck. So go ahead, John.
Good morning, John Fraley, speaking on behalf of State of Arizona. We are not mean or against the role that everyone plays in the emergency department. We're not trying to sound like the naysayers, but we think this comes down to good management in emergency department of recognizing everybody's role that they play. We don't mind sharing our pizza with the entire team during emergency nurses week, but this comes down to good management, helping recognize the unique role of everyone, from housekeeping to lab techs to ED techs to everyone. So we love everyone's help. We all need to work as a team, and this is for good management to acknowledge. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'll recognize Cheryl Marcel. Cheryl, you can unmute. And Sally Snow, you're on deck. Go ahead, Cheryl.
This is Cheryl Marcel. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I live in New York State. I applaud your thoughtfulness for these texts, and they do deserve recognition, but they are important. So are the doctors, so is radiology, so is a lot of other departments that help us with our jobs. However, I feel that the organization's name is Emergency Nurses, and I think we just need to focus on ourselves. We need to hopefully that our employers include them in recognition, but I don't feel that it's our job. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Sally Snow. Sally, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, Adam. This is Sally Snow from Texas, speaking on behalf of myself. Just a suggestion. This seems very focused on a specific title, emergency clinical assistant, and I'm not sure all emergency departments have such a job title. So I would suggest that we consider using the term unlicensed assistive personnel so that it's all inclusive of anyone that is working in a tech role in our emergency departments. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, the speaking queue is empty and has been since Sally started speaking. So with that, we will go ahead and close the discussion on 20-05. We're moving on to proposal 20-06. This one is titled Preparing Nurses for Care in the Pre-Hospital Emergency EMS Setting. This is authored by Greg Zanon. And Greg, you will have 2 minutes, so you can go ahead and raise your hand in the participants tab. And when prompted, go ahead and unmute.
Hello.
Hi, Greg. We can hear you.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks.
All right, good morning, everybody. The purpose of my resolution is twofold. Primarily, it is to support the education and preparation of emergency nurses working in the pre-hospital setting. Pre-hospital nursing is a recognized subspecialty of emergency nursing. Emergency nurses are already and have already been working in the pre-hospital setting for multiple years. While nurses are not the traditional pre-hospital provider in the United States, on an international scale, for example, in the Netherlands, they are the primary pre-hospital provider. It has been acknowledged that nurses working in this setting need specialized training, which is often not available. Secondarily, this resolution is meant to address some previously identified and ongoing issues in the pre-hospital specialty care area. In some states, for a nurse to work in the pre-hospital setting, non-nursing regulatory agencies are requiring that nurses obtain a second license in addition to their nursing license. This is onerous, unnecessary, and leads to legal and ethical conflicts. The Emergency Nurses Association and the Air and Surface Transport Nurses Association have already taken a position against this, but methods to address these issues have not been identified or prioritized. This organization is some of the most talented nursing professionals, and I know that we can come up with collaborative, realistic solutions to address these issues. Feel free to reach out to me privately if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll open the floor for discussion on proposal 20-06. At this time, I'll have Mary Van Hoy and Kelly Allen raise your hand in the participant panel in Zoom. You're on deck. Mary, I will recognize you. Mary Van Hoy, you can unmute when you're prompted.
Okay, it's Mary Alice. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, great. Okay. This is Mary Alice Van Hoy. I'm speaking for the Maryland State Council. We do not support this resolution. Roles and responsibilities and scope of practice are determined by state licensing boards and by individual employers who provide specialized education and training. This is outside of the scope of VNA. There are multiple nursing roles in the pre-hospital setting, and each has their own scope of practice. Certification and licensure may vary by state and role. As a nurse who does 911, I am required to maintain a separate EMT or paramedic in addition to my RN license. Our Board of Nursing has specific prescribed requirements for nurses in interfacility transport. As a former college EMS program director, nurses interested in 911 receive customized education to obtain their paramedic license, as well as paramedics pursuing nursing careers. It does vary in the 911 and interfacility transport. Those are two very different roles. So each group commented about the differences in the scope of practice and their roles and responsibilities. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Kelly Allen. Kelly, you can unmute when you're prompted. We'll have Ann Brown and Lisa Scott. Please raise your hand in the participant panel. You two are on deck. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, this is Kelly Allen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. I am representing Washington State Emergency Nurses Association as the president. We are opposed to this. We strongly felt that nurses who want to go work pre-hospital, and I have done that myself before, that pre-hospital setting should set the standards for that. And typically in states like Washington, they do. You work under different protocols pre-hospital. So as a group, we were pretty much opposed to spending money and focusing on this area. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Ann Brown. Ann, you can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted. Lisa Scott and Gina Slobodin, you can raise your hand in the participants panel. You will be on deck. Go ahead, Ann. All right. Okay, and Ann, it appears that there is not a mic set up at this time, so we will move on to Lisa Scott. Lisa, you can unmute when prompted. I will have Gina Slobodin raise your hand in the participant panel, and Deborah Skeen, raise your hand. You two are on deck. And Lisa, you can go ahead.
Hi, this is Lisa Scott. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lisa Scott. I'm from the state of Virginia, speaking on behalf of myself. I just wanted to say that as a former emergency department nurse and a current flight nurse, I really appreciate the thought and the work behind what the author has done, but I would like to point out that ENA is already collaborating with the Air, Surface, and Transport Nurses Association as well as EMS, and I don't feel it's within ENA's scope to set standards for pre-hospital nurses. This is something, as echoed by my colleagues that have already spoken, that is done by the Office of EMS, and it's going to vary state to state. So I personally oppose this resolution.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Gina Slobodin. You can unmute when you're prompted. Deborah Skeen and Sheila Silva, please both have your hands raised in the participant panel. You're on deck. Go ahead, Gina.
Gina Slobodin speaking on behalf of the Pennsylvania State Council. We also are against this resolution, mainly because in the state of Pennsylvania, we have a similar situation as other states have, where the Board of Nursing and the EMS Council are two separate entities. We also look at it as saying in Pennsylvania, we can't agree on the entry level education for nurses or paramedics and EMTs. So it would be very difficult to agree with a national standard, especially since Pennsylvania just adopted the national EMT criteria for paramedics about 5 years ago. It was also brought to our attention that someone had worked on something like this similar and had developed guidelines back in maybe the 90s, and that the membership had voted that down at that time as well. That's all.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Deborah Skeen. Deborah, you can unmute when you're prompted. Sheila Silva and Charlene Staub, you are on deck, so have your hand raised in the participants panel. Go ahead, Deborah.
Hi, this is Deborah Skeen speaking on behalf of myself and the Colorado State Council. So as a previous paramedic field instructor and a flight nurse in two different programs, I appreciate how the training for RNs in the field is incredibly inconsistent. So we applaud the intent of GA 2006. However, we feel like a lot of work has been done on this topic by ASTNA, Air and Surface Transport Nurses Association. We would actually like to see resolves 1 and 2 remain, but strike resolves 3, 4, and 5. In addition, we would change the wording for resolve 2 Resolved that the Emergency Nursing Association identify and work with stakeholders to create or develop a position statement and a toolkit for healthcare workers to utilize when adopting transition to practice programs for emergency nurses transitioning to the pre-hospital setting. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'll recognize Sheila Silva. Sheila, you can go ahead and unmute. Charlene Staub and Kayla Bleacher have your hands raised. You're on deck. Go ahead, Sheila.
Yes, this is Sheila Silva, representing Massachusetts ENA, and we are opposed to this resolution as written. While we support assessing the educational needs of emergency nurses working in the pre-hospital setting as well as all settings, and we would support inclusion of some educational materials in our existing courses, we agree with the previous speakers that EMS and nursing scope of practice is regulated at a state-by-state level, and that it would not be within our purview to become involved in that. Also, for resolve in rows 30 to 32, the development and continual revision of a nationally standardized recognized course would take a great amount of resources, both human and financial, to develop a new course and revise that course when we have several existing courses in which we could incorporate some of this education. So as written, we cannot support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Charlene Staub. You can unmute. Kayla Bleacher and Jason Carter, you're on deck, so please have your hand raised. Go ahead, Charlene.
Good morning. Charlene Staub, representing the state of Arizona and myself. In respect to GA 2006, we do not support this resolution as written. We strongly believe in education. Education is knowledge. Knowledge is a powerful tool when better understanding of environmental conditions. And obviously the pre-hospital situation is definitely a different environment. And those working in that environment need to understand it and work in it safely for the best outcomes. We initially were very unclear on why we needed this resolution. We do recognize that the Air and Surface Transport Organization has a core curriculum. We recognize that the Department of Transportation also has very specific guidelines. We were concerned about the estimate of 25,000 when we noted that it was a duplication or reinventing the wheel that was out there, as the resources already do exist. We also are very concerned that it may be outside the scope of this particular organization as far as detailing its.
All right, the time has expired. I'll recognize Kayla Bleacher. You can unmute, and Jason Carter and Linda Zidek, you'll be on deck. So please raise your hand in the participant panel. Go ahead, Kayla. All right, so for now we're going to move on from Kay. We'll move to Jason Carter. Jason, you can unmute. When prompted, I'll have Linda Zidek and Jessica Kastner on deck. Have your hands raised. And you can go ahead, Jason.
Hi, this is Jason Carter. I'm representing myself and the Oklahoma State Council. And as this resolution 2006 is currently written, we cannot support this resolution. As a previous paramedic myself, I feel like that if we want nurses to be paramedics, they should have to complete the entire training program and do everything that I had to do to be a paramedic. It's the same as when paramedics become nurses. They're required to do a bridge program or sometimes even a full program before they're allowed to take boards. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'll recognize Linda Zidek. Jessica, so Linda, you can unmute. Jessica Kastner and Vicky Ambassador, you can raise your hand. You'll be on deck. And Linda, you can go ahead. right, we're going to move on. Linda, it looks like you're unmuted. You can try to speak. Okay, so for anybody who is having technical difficulties, please again utilize that live chat on the left-hand side. Our staff can work to help you get some of those things resolved. Let's see. I think I can hear, do I have Linda on right now? Okay, we'll move on to Jessica Kastner. Jessica, you can unmute when you're prompted. Vicky Bassador, you can be on deck with your hand raised, as well as Carla Brim. Go ahead and raise your hand. And Jessica, go ahead.
Yes, this is Jessica Kastner from New York, speaking on behalf of myself. Please confirm audio.
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of this resolution, in particular because I want us to be proactive rather than reactive to how paramedic is currently defined or has previously been defined. Pre-hospital nursing, especially in COVID-19, has been revolutionized by teletriage, telehealth, and new modes of delivery that the emergency nurse is critical in delivering. Rather than focusing on the current scope of practice and differences between the in-hospital emergency nurse and the pre-hospital paramedic, I think it's crucial that ENA take a leadership role in defining the emergency nurse practice of the future, and COVID has taught us that that can be emergency nursing without walls. The January issue of the Journal of Emergency Nursing has several evidence-based publications speaking to this, in particular looking at the European model of the ambulance nurse. And there are several policies in order to save costs of no transport now, where the paramedic is expanding their scope of practice, and those patients aren't even coming into the emergency department. So I think there's clear opportunity for education for overlap, and this is without a doubt emergency nursing. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to recognize Vicky Bassador. Vicky, you can go ahead and unmute. Carla Brim and Terry Crowley, you're on deck, so please have your hand raised. Go ahead, Vicky.
Hi, Vicky, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Vicky.
Okay, thank you. I'm Vicky Bassador, and I'm from the Illinois State Council, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself in support. As the previous speaker stated, I agree that nurses working in pre-hospital settings vary from state to state, but the future is leaning towards more out-of-hospital healthcare versus inpatient healthcare. And I think that there are some developing community paramedicine programs in various states that utilize emergency nurses and advanced practice nurses. And I believe that we need to be proactive, and this resolution is identifying the increasing costs for workforce of nurses in a community setting. So I agree with all the resolved statements, and I believe that this is a forward resolution that's going to prepare emergency nurses to better to have education and further define their scope of practice to work in the community.
The time for discussion on this proposal has expired. So with that, thank you everybody for your participation there. We're going to move on to proposal 20-07. If the author representative can please raise your hand now. Proposal 20-07 is titled Increasing Community Engagement Through Collaboration and Recognition, authored by Shannon Kane and Lauren Plain. Shannon, you'll have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and you can go ahead and unmute when you're prompted and take it away.
Mr. President, Board of Directors, past presidents, Resolutions Committee, guests, and fellow delegates. My name is Shannon Kane from North Carolina, and I am here to present to you Resolution GA 20-07, Increasing Community Engagement Through Collaboration and Recognition. As an emerging professional, I have discovered the importance of community connection and have noticed the potential for involvement in my own community. From the teen driver who is texting and now has a head bleed, to the child who is not strapped in correctly and is now being run as a pediatric trauma, to the homeless man who has not eaten all day, and the elder adult who fell because they didn't know how to use their cane. As ED nurses, we see these people as patients after the fact. As members of the Emergency Nurses Association, we have the platform to make a difference and impact these lives before they come through our doors. Many of you have great ideas around injury prevention and community connection and want to do more to engage. We need the support, encouragement, and resources to collaborate and work together to impact the community beyond the bedside. Placing value on community connection through resources, such as a platform for collaboration and recognition, not only touches the spirit of philanthropy, but re-engages you, the most trusted professionals. Our communities have stepped up and supported us during COVID-19 by donating food, masks, face shields, and more. Let's band together and use our experiences, knowledge, and connections to impact our patients' lives before they come through our doors and make our communities stronger. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The floor is now open for 10 minutes of discussion on Proposal 20-07. At this time, I invite Marianne Donnell to raise your hand in the participants panel. And just a reminder, each speaker is limited to 1 minute in this 10 minutes of discussion. And so at this time, I recognize Marianne Donnell. You can unmute at this time.
Hi, this is Marianne. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Excellent. My name is Marianne Donnell, and I am speaking on behalf of the Massachusetts ENA delegation. We do not support Resolution GA 2007. We agree with the idea behind this resolution. However, we feel that this is covered in the 2025 strategic plan, as well as in several other publications and toolkits that are available to ENA members. We feel that this would be much more beneficial to be dealt with boards and councils for prioritization with awards and financial incentives at a local level.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Carla Brim. Carla, go ahead and raise your hand. You'll be able to unmute once you're prompted. And then Kelly Allen, you'll be on deck. So Kelly, go ahead and raise your hand. And at this time, you can go ahead, Carla.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you, Carla.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of Washington State Council. We are opposed to this for many of the reasons the person prior to me just stated. We believe this is covered in many other ways. We felt that the $25,000 plus was an expense that was not necessarily best to serve our members, especially in these times of financial, we need to be tightening our belts. We believe we discussed about that this could be used maybe as part of our Connect. We could connect in that way. We could use our profiles to state ways in which we're willing to volunteer and to help each other, but we did not feel that the $25,000 plus was a warranted expense for this. Many of us do volunteer within our communities. I think that should be a self-driven thing. You should be reaching out to your communities. We were also fearful that we could be getting ourselves into situations where we're putting conflict between our members by supporting various things that maybe all members may not be supportive of, such as gun issues or those sorts of things that may become a political issue. And we felt that ENA should stay focused upon our priorities of education and promoting and mentoring our professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Kelly Allen. Kelly, you can unmute when you're prompted. Carolyn Doyle and Vicki Cassabaum, you're on deck. Have your hand raised in the participants panel. And Kelly, you can go ahead. Kelly, go ahead and unmute when you're prompted. All right, so we will.
Very good. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yep, we can hear you now.
Okay.
I'm just following. This is Kelly Allen from Washington State ENA, representing myself and Washington State ENA, following Carla there with the confirmation that our state chapter was in opposition to this this resolution, based on all of the things she talked about, but primarily the cost and primarily that we're already volunteering. If you look at it, in essence, we're volunteering for ENA right now. And so we felt like it was kind of a piggyback onto something that we're already doing. And again, we felt strongly that we might be supporting things that other members are really, really opposed to. So just to reiterate what Carla said, thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Carolyn Doyle. Carolyn, you can unmute. And Vicky Cassabaum and Chelsea Collins, you're on deck. Please have your hand raised. Go ahead, Carolyn. All right, Carolyn, it looks like you're still muted. Go ahead and if you're prompted, unmute, or even if you're not prompted, try to unmute. All right, we'll move on to Vicky Cassabaum. Vicky can unmute, and Chelsea Collins is on deck, and Caroline Doyle, your hand can be raised as well.
Good morning. I'm speaking from Colorado on behalf of myself and our delegation. I had opportunity to speak to the author of this resolution, and I personally feel strongly that we should support this. I have been an ENA member for many years, and my basis for joining ENA was driven from NCARE and actually the community engagement piece. I had at one point kind of swayed away from ENA because when NCARE kind of joined into and became ISQIP, I felt like there was not a lot of direction and not a lot of focus on the injury prevention aspect. And I would like to see myself that we had some programming and that we had some opportunities to get back out into the community as well. So
All right. We will now recognize Chelsea Collins. Chelsea, you can unmute. And Carolyn Doyle, you'll be on deck. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Hi, Chelsea Collins from Colorado State Delegation. I want to reiterate what Vicki said, but then also go ahead and add some additional information. As a former Resolutions Committee member, I want to highlight the fact that this resolution was reviewed by the Resolutions Committee and the board through its typical process. If these things were already currently in place, then this resolution would not have made it to the floor. So I want to go ahead and highlight that there is some stuff that still needs to be implemented and done forward. Also, I don't know if any of you guys caught it earlier. I get that we're concerned about the $25,000 potential impact, but Jeff Solheim stated earlier that we have $21 million within our organization. Why not utilize it for things such as advocating and supporting community involvement so that we can better represent ourselves as ER nurses, not even just in the emergency department, but outside of the emergency department as well. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Caroline Doyle. Caroline, you can go ahead and try to unmute. And David McDonald, you'll be on deck. Please have your hand raised. Go ahead, Caroline.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Fantastic. Hello, my name is Caroline Doyle, and I am representing Maryland ENA. We oppose this resolution as it is written, as it is too broad in scope. We feel that different communities will have different community outreach resources. What exactly is ENA's role in this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize David McDonald. You can unmute. Lisa Burke, go ahead. You're on deck. Have your hand raised. Go ahead, David.
Hi, this is David McDonald, and speaking on behalf of myself from North Carolina. I just wanted to emphasize that just because we have something in our strategic plan does not mean we actually have a plan to implement it. or in any way, shape, or form is ENA encouraging it. Okay, just because you put it in a plan, in a strategic plan for 20 to 20 for a 5-year plan does not mean that we're actually advocating for it. We have about 5 to 10 different awards, that I can think of on our website right now. Absolutely 0 of them have to do with community engagement. They're on clinical practice, education, which are all different parts of the awards, all different parts of our strategic plan, but we don't have anything specifically dedicated to this. And that's just one way that the ENA can get actively involved in fostering this relationship with our community. We can put it in the Lantern Award. We can put it in the State Council Achievement Awards, as a highlight for us to actually go and attack that specific strategic goal. So to say that just because it's in the goal, we're not going to support this resolution, I think there's a disconnect there. What this resolution is saying that is we're acknowledging it's on the strategic goal, but we haven't actually implemented a plan to actually push this and make it a priority for the members. Despite what everyone's saying so far about what you want to get involved in, the ENA is not saying what you need to and what you can't get involved in, but just to get involved with your community. And what this resolution is kind of pushing forward, in my opinion, is to actually get involved and have ENA push it down to make sure that people get involved. So I would encourage people to reconsider and support this resolution so that we can be told and encouraged to be involved in our communities.
Thank you. At this time, we'll recognize Lisa Burke. Lisa, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, I'm Lisa Burke. I'm representing the state, myself, from the state of Oregon. I fully support this resolution. I feel like good things come out of bright ideas. This is like a bright idea card that you can post at ENA. People can share what they're doing in their community. Maybe it happens in, West Virginia, Florida, or Maine, but here in Oregon, I can say, well, how can I do that for my community? This is all about collaborative. It also engages our members that may not want to be a TNCC instructor. They might not want to be in a leadership role. This can bring our membership together in ways that we haven't even seen yet. So I think this is a good start to help provide a platform to get in new areas. I think this is just an opportunity for growth that we haven't had before. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Harriet Hawkins. Harriet, go ahead and raise your hand. When you're prompted, you'll be able to unmute and go ahead. And the floor is yours. Okay, looks like we are still waiting on Harriet Hawkins to unmute. You can go ahead and unmute. And as we're working on that, just a reminder, you can see the full text of any and all of these resolutions in the General Assembly Handbook, which is on the General Assembly section of the ENA website, which is ena.org/general-assembly. We'll take you right to it. So you can see the full text since we're not able to display the whole thing on the screen. And the same thing will go this afternoon if the Resolutions Committee moves any amendments forward. Those amendments will all be available in that report. Do we have Harriet Hawkins?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you, Harriet.
Yes, my name is Harriet Hawkins. I'm from Illinois, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I don't know about the money part of this. I don't know how much it would cost us to do this. Actually, I think we could do this without it costing much. What I see this doing is encouraging us as emergency nurses to get out in our community and do more public service, as it were, whether it's national, international, or just local. There's so much that we could do, and as a group, with our local chapters, our local state councils, it would be easy for us to reach out to others in our community and go out and show ourselves as emergency nurses. In Chicago, we have the marathon. We were going to have a marathon. We were going to have the breast cancer 3-day. We have races all the time. It would be a great place for us to go out and show ourselves as emergency nurses and to build ourselves as colleagues, getting to know each other better in a different sense. So I wholly support this, and I support ENA recognizing the contributions that emergency nurses make in their local and global community. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Adam Brown. Adam, you can raise your hand, and when you're prompted, you can unmute. And then Roseanne Moni will be on deck, so you can raise your hand. And go ahead, Adam. All right, at this time, I will recognize Roseanne Moni. You can go ahead and unmute. Adam, you'll be on deck. Adam Brown. Okay, we can hear you now.
Hey, this is Adam Brown from North Carolina. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that I am for this this amendment or this resolution. I just think during the time of the division and polarization that we have in this country, this resolution is an opportunity for us to reach out and bring people together. I would have to respectfully disagree with the naysayers. The resolution does not specifically direct which organizations we have to reach out to, and it would be up to the local chapters on how to implement the different ways that we can get involved in our community. This is a starting point for us to get involved, and I just think that anything that I just think that this is a positive resolution for our organization. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our time for consideration of this proposal has expired. And we are going to move on to proposal 20-08. If the author representative can please raise your hand. 20-08 is titled Advocating for Standardized Safety and Well-Being of ER Nurses. This proposal is authored by Chelsea Collins, Gina Slobodan, Amy Porcelli, and Kelsey Bice. Chelsea, you will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself when prompted.
Thank you, Adam. As you can all imagine, this conversation started back in March with the conflicting information and changing information day by day and hour by hour. How many of you have had full access to PPE at all times and been able to dispose of after each patient interaction and not cleaned and recycled? Remember the provider in Washington who lost their job because they spoke out about the safety concerns surrounding PPE availability? Do you know of nurses who either got written up or lost their job because they're advocating for their own safety? Or are you a nurse who is afraid to speak up because of these things? In a state like Colorado, we are a right to work state, so I could lose my job for any reason whatsoever. Do you know what your rights are within your state? Do you know if you have safe harbor laws? Do you and your colleagues even know where to start to explore your rights as an employee? Our second resolve addresses this concern, and not by telling people this is where you need to go to sue or how to go about doing so, but is intended to be a resource so that people can find out what their rights are as an employee within their state. This resolution was discussed with Kimberly Pendle, the legal counsel, and was adjusted to ensure that it wasn't providing legal guidance, rather resources that may have legal impact. To be clear, we are not asking to provide legal counsel or asking for a representation. We need a place to turn for guidance, and as our professional organization, it seems obvious that ENA should be there to support us with these resources. If we were in Vegas right now and together, I imagine that there would be very few people raising their hands to these questions. Our intent with this resolution is to take the lessons learned from COVID and use it to learn and grow and expand our knowledge as we move forward from this pandemic. ENA has done an excellent job so far with COVID, but we want to ensure this continues beyond this pandemic. We view the ENA as the premier organization on research and education for emergency nurses, and we feel that ENA should be involved with collecting and disseminating information surrounding epidemics and pandemics, information that is based in evidence and not supply chain issues. Yes, there may be supply chain issues, but the nurses need to be able to fall back on the evidence to hold our organization and our national leaders accountable.
All right, and the time has expired. Thank you, Chelsea. With that, I will ask that Karen Kettner Julie Rossi, and Sally Snow. All please raise your hand. Karen Kettner, I recognize you at this time. When you're prompted, you can unmute and go ahead. Each of our speakers will have 1 minute. We'll have 10 minutes for the discussion of this proposal. Go ahead, Karen. All right. We will move on for now to Julie Rossi. Julie, you can go ahead and unmute. I ask that Sally Snow and Santana Olvera have your hands raised as you'll be on deck. Go ahead, Julie.
Hi, Julie Rossi, delegate from California. Just an audio check?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Yahoo, finally. So I am opposed to this resolution, and not because of the content regarding healthy work environments, et cetera. In fact, California delegate Garrett Chan and myself, we co-authored a healthy work environment resolution some years ago. My concern is with the second resolve, develop, compile, and publish resources and education for emergency nurses seeking litigious guidance and assistance. With that resolution as one of the resolves, I will be unable to vote for this. I do hear the author stating that this is not about resources. However, the resolve states just that, to provide resources. I don't see how the organization can look at 50 states and determine all which is the laws, et cetera, regarding bringing suit forward. I don't believe it's the ENA's responsibility to provide that kind.
All right, and the time has expired. So at this time, I recognize Sally Snow. You can unmute. Santana Olvera and Shannon Kane, go ahead and have your hands raised. You'll be on deck. Go ahead, Sally.
Thank you, Adam. I'm Sally Snow, speaking on behalf of myself from the state of Texas. I'd like to speak in favor of this resolution and applaud these emerging leader advocates. I feel like the future of our organization is in really good hands with you guys supporting us. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. This time I'll recognize Santana Olvera. Santana, you can unmute. Shannon Kane and Caitlin Nave, you'll be on deck. Have your hands raised. Go ahead, Santana.
Hey guys, Santana Olvera from the state of Texas, speaking on behalf of myself and to Resolution GA 20-08. I would love to commend the authors for this and kind of echoing what a lot of us feel and think. So thank you for putting those into words and bringing it forward as a resolution. I definitely agree with the intent that Chelsea had stated. Again, reiterating that this is not advising legal counsel, but this is giving the tools for nurses across the country internationally to be able to know what and how to protect themselves, or if you're in a particular situation, advocacy, professional nurse councils will go so far, and especially in 2020 has proven that when there's a lot of gray area, it's nice to have these specified so that you know where to go when you're in situations you've never been before. I highly promote the education, knowledge. That is power. That ensures you've worked so hard and you love your patients and you love what you do, for anything to compromise that. So again, I just want to applaud each of these authors and show my support for this resolution. Thank y'all.
At this time, I recognize Shannon Kane, Caitlin Nave, and Jennifer Kurtz. You can have your hands raised. You'll be on deck. Go ahead, Shannon.
Hi, this is Shannon Kane from North Carolina. I am speaking for this resolution. As a new nurse, having guidance from people who are much more experienced in this realm is essential. I remember becoming a nurse and receiving a ton of letters in the mail about malpractice insurance and not even knowing what I was looking at. And so having our professional organizations support us by providing resources and educational materials to new nurses and all nurses who need this guidance would be essential to us. I think that researching the needs of our group regarding what's going to happen when there's disasters, epidemics, and we're in situations that we've never been in before, and then disseminating information based on that would be essential. And I am very much so in support of this resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize Caitlin Nave. Caitlin, you can go ahead and unmute. I'll ask that Jennifer Kurtz and Lauren Plain have your hands raised. You're on deck. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hi, this is Caitlin Nave speaking from the freezing state of Colorado on behalf of myself. For the first resolved, I support the first resolved, and I'd like to call on Lisa Wolf for her perspective in the research, please.
Okay, if Lisa's on, we can give Lisa 1 minute to speak to this.
Thanks so much. This resolution falls well within a lot of the work that we have done recently at ENA around workplace environment. And so in the sense that this falls well within our research plan to continue to look at the effectiveness of interventions to promote healthy workplaces, including secondary stress that is a result of organizational violence, which is, I think, really the overarching issue that's being put forward in this resolution. How do we teach nurses to protect themselves, essentially from their institution and from the organizing bodies that at this point are seeking to really disenfranchise them. So this research is well within our scope and well within the stuff that we're already doing. I can't speak to the legal aspects of this because that's not my area of expertise. I think that might be more.
All right, thank you. And we will move to Lauren Plain. I recognize Lauren. You can go ahead and unmute. I'll have Daniel Nadworny and Jessica Kastner on deck. Have your hands raised. Go ahead, Lauren.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lauren Plain from the state of Virginia, speaking on behalf of myself. I'd like to speak in favor of this resolution and hopes to reiterate the point that these authors are not seeking for, legal litigation counsel, but instead to help our membership understand better what questions they should be asking and to better advocate for us, especially in our current situation. So just reiterating the point, they're truly just trying to provide resources for us and to take advantage of the research that's already been conducted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, I will recognize Jennifer Kurtz. Jennifer, you can unmute. I have Dan Nadworny and Jessica Kastner on deck. And go ahead. Okay. To continue moving on, give me just 1 minute here. At this time, we'd like to give 1 minute to Kimberly Pendo to provide a legal response on this. That was a request that was submitted here. If Kimberly's on, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, hi, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is Kimberly Pendo, legal counsel. As some commenters have pointed out, ENA would not be providing legal guidance or litigation assistance to members. That is something that the organization is not in a position to do for a number of reasons. So, publishing resources and things along the lines of the first resolution are the types of assistance that ENA could provide. But litigation assistance and guidance is not within the realm of ENA.
Thank you for that. So at this time, I'll recognize Daniel Nadworny. You can unmute. I'll ask that Jessica Kastner and Frida Lyon be on deck with your hands raised. Go ahead, Dan.
Good morning, Adam. Good morning, everybody. Dan Ednery speaking on behalf of myself and the state of Massachusetts. We are in support of this resolution, as it does speak to the needs for us to be respectful and thoughtful of the impacts of emergency nurses as we deal with disasters, whether they be human-made, natural events, or such things like COVID. I would like to ask the authors to consider adding some language in there around collaboration with ACEP. As the ACEP liaison for ENA, the group has been pushing forward with the Laura Breen Healthcare Protector Act, who's a physician who committed suicide after the impacts of COVID. So highlighting that more, I think, is essential for this. And then the other part of this I want to mention as far as research goes is how great it will be to do more understanding of this. It's a unique time for all of us to have COVID happen, and it's a chance for us to understand how we can best prepare for the next event to take place. Thanks, Adam.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to recognize Jessica Kastner. She was on our, we tried recognizing her before. Hopefully we have some tech issues. So Jessica, you can go ahead and unmute. We have Frida Lyon and Kyle Smith on deck. Have your hands raised. Go ahead, Jessica. Jessica?
Yes, this is Jessica Kastner speaking on behalf of New York. Please confirm audio.
Yep, we can hear you, Jessica.
Thank you. We are speaking against this resolution, but very respectful for the wonderful job the authors did, particularly in the background and the first whereas. We would like to request a consideration, or will recommend as the dialogue continues, that line 30 through 31 be struck from this. There are many opportunities for empowerment and conflict resolution before getting to the point of civil suit and litigation. As a professional organization, there are also many legal avenues that can be considered, such as an amicus brief or a friend of the court, to state a professional organization's position without being engaged in an individual civil suit. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jennifer Kurtz. I'd like to recognize Jennifer Kurtz at this time. She was the one that we had tried to recognize earlier. So go ahead, Jennifer, you can unmute at this time. We have Frida and Kyle on deck still. And then Jennifer, if you are able to unmute right now. I think I might be able to hear you now. All right. We'll have to move on. I'd refer Jennifer to the chat on the left-hand side for assistance with the technical aspects. At this time, I'll recognize Frida Lyon. Frida, you can go ahead and unmute. I'll have Kyle Smith and Stephen Hobbs on deck. Please have your hands raised in the participant tab.
Thank you. This is Frida Lyon, and I'm from the great state of Georgia again. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. As an executive of an organization, I am concerned about lines 30 through 31 and the implications that it may have for an organization to no longer be able to support their development of their individuals through the professional organization of ENA. I do not want to have anything that we do as an organization, as a professional organization, to make our healthcare organizations and employers uncomfortable with ENA and supporting ENA and the professional development of our organization. I think this is a fabulous resolution. I think we need to work on resiliency and make sure that our staff and our employees and our Emergency Nurses Association members are supported through disaster and all of the implications.
All right, thank you. The time expired. At this time, I'll recognize Kyle Smith. Kyle, you can go ahead and unmute. Stephen Hobbs, you're on deck. You can have your hand raised. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hi, this is Kyle Smith from the state of North Carolina, speaking for myself, speaking in favor of this resolution. I think that's something that this pandemic has shown when I talk to other emergency nurses is that alone, often nurses are put into situations they feel may be compromising to their safety. and they don't really have an idea if other nurses are also placed in similar situations and what they should do to try to advocate for themselves. So I think that this is a role that our organization could really fill in helping to make sure that our members are safe and well supported. I think that's really sort of the point of a professional organization like ENA. So I'm strongly in support of this resolution.
Thank you. At this time, I will recognize Stephen Hobbs. Stephen, you can go ahead and unmute. Anna Valdez, you'll be on deck. Please have your hand raised. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, this is Stephen Hobbs, speaking for myself from Hawaii. I think this resolution certainly falls within the goals and objectives of ENA. As someone previous to me has noted, I do have some concerns with that second resolved, and could really only support it if that second resolve clause was removed, or at the very least the word litigious removed from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This time I'll recognize Anna Valdez. Anna, you can unmute. Dina Breacher, you'll be on deck. Go ahead and have your hand raised.
Hi, this is Anna Valdez from California speaking on behalf of myself. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Overall, I am in support of this resolution. However, I agree that the second resolved should be stricken from it. And what I recommend in place of that is education and guidance on resources available to nurses for whistleblowing when there are safety issues, and also advocating for the safe care of nurses when they're providing care in crisis situations.
Thank you. This time I'll recognize Dina Breacher. You can unmute. And we're getting close to the end of our time for this discussion. So go ahead, Dina.
Good afternoon. This is Dina Breacher speaking on behalf of myself. I applaud the authors for the goal of this resolution, and I have a suggestion for lines 30 and 31. Those are resources that our partner organization, NSO, I am positive would be absolutely thrilled to partner and make sure that those are available on their website. So if you decide to strike those two lines, 30 and 31,
all right, and the time has expired for conversation on this resolution. So this concludes our open reference hearings. I do want to say thank you again to everybody for everything that you did, your patience as we figured out some of the issues this morning, and everybody's amazing conversations and involvement throughout our reference hearings today. So with that, I turn it back over to Mike.
Adam, thank you so much. I'll tell you, if we were actually in Vegas, all the delegates would be standing up, giving you a big round of applause. So great job there today. So great job.
Thanks, Mike.
So our time is up here. So the resolution committee will deliberate based on the dialogue that we've had today during the open reference hearings discussions. The committee will determine recommendations and prepare potential amendments to each proposal, all of which will be presented to the General Assembly this afternoon for consideration. The committee's recommendations will also include any proposals placed on a consent agenda. Proposed amendments will be posted on the General Assembly delegates webpage by 1:30 Central Time. So please check the website for any posted amendments prior to returning to this afternoon's General Assembly session. Also, we ask that you stay logged in to the Lumi platform during the lunch recess. We're going to resume at 2 p.m. here. So again, thank you for everyone for the dynamic discussion. I look forward to a healthy debate from this morning, and we will see you back here at 2 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you then.